Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, October 1st. It's October regular board meeting. The board met well, first of all, we do have translation services available. If anyone requires translation who is present in the room, we have headsets available in the back. So please see along the back table there, you can get a headset. If you are joining us on Zoom and need translation, you can see the globe, the circle.
Buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a esta primera junta del mes de octubre. Vamos a tener interpretación al español como siempre. Si por favor eligen el globo terráqueo en la parte inferior de la pantalla, nos podrán escuchar en español a mí y a mi compañero David. Gracias.
Thank you. Right. The board met in closed session immediately prior to open session this evening. And on a student topic, stipulated expulsion, we had a stipulated expulsion hearing. At this time, I would ask for a motion with regard to that.
I move approval of the stipulated expulsion. Second.
We have a sheet. We have a motion by Mr. Unger and a second by Mr. Clausen. I will go down the row. Mr. Unger? Yes. Mr. Clausen?
Yes.
Mrs. Roger?
Yes.
Mr. Buckland?
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton? Yes. Mr. Banfield?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Just give me one moment, please. Finish this. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Do we have consensus on the order of business this evening? Everyone good? All right. Next, we have our student representatives to the board. I know that Hawthorne is here and you will like hearing our student representatives because this could be you someday. They're going to talk about all the things going on at the high school. And I understand that Morro Bay is going first this evening, so welcome and tell us what you have.
All right, thank you everyone again for having us back. We'd like to go through some of the happenings that have been going on at campus since we've last seen you. In the academic section, senior ERWC classes are doing community activism projects by reaching out to local organizations that have a positive impact on our community. Avid seniors are currently launching applications. Tutors from Cal Poly as well are coming twice a week to help with either applications or math and science tests. Our journalism and video production classes have been working very hard and put on their first broadcast on Thursday as well. They have their students posting their articles on the website for the journalism class. And our seniors of the month, which you can see in the picture to the left over here, for September were Lucy Fortini and Eli Walbin. They're pictured on the left. And the students of the month for October were Orion Ray and Stuart Coletti, who are pictured on the right.
Yes, amazing. And so for FFA just had their Green Hand Challenge, which is when freshmen get their first degree. And they also had their annual FFA barbecue, in which they had the most participation in over 10 years. As well, if you look on the bottom right, that's Anna Minetti, and she was selected to be one of the San Luis Obispo 4-H County Ambassadors, and we're very proud of her.
In sports and clubs news, Surf Team has started up and has had a great start and can't wait for their first competition, which is coming up rather soon. JV Girls Volleyball had an away tournament in Pismo to play and to bond as a team. They love to be able to play together and learning how to work better with each other. Boys beach volleyball had a tournament in Pismo Beach recently, and Dance Fusion performed at our local international festival.
In news of ASB, we just had our first dodgeball tournament, and it was amazing with many student teams as well as even a staff team, which is our favorite. And the upcoming, we have our homecoming, which is next week. Our theme is Vegas, and I'm super excited for it. On Monday, we're going to have PJ Day. Tuesday will be Paris Twin Day. Wednesday will be a Flamingo Pink Out. Thursday will be Hard Rock Cafe, and there'll be a drink station in the quad. And then Friday, there'll be class colors. We're super excited and can't wait for to share next few weeks on what's happening. And thank you guys for letting us present.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm really excited to see you guys all. Hawthorne students, I want to give you a warm welcome. I was actually a Hawthorne student myself, so welcome you all. Alrighty, I'm going to get us started. So I want to highlight a barbecue we have every month. It's called the Student of the Month Barbecue, and the ASB class cooks for a student of every single teacher on campus. They get to choose one student that they think has really gone above and beyond, and we get to treat them with a burger, and then we get to also eat with the teachers and just have a good time and highlight all the amazing achievements on campus. So that just happened this month. I want to recognize these seniors, Laird Anderson, Gavin Good, Elizabeth Haight Barrow, Jay McClure, Pablo Landeros, Aria Olson, Juniper Patrick, Alana Spearman, and McKenna Voke. These 12th grade students have earned National Recognition Program Awards from the College Board. It's for outstanding performance on PSAT or AP exams, and they have high academic performance based on GPA. So these students really went above and beyond. Moving on, this week is our homecoming week, and our theme is coming home to California. So it's sort of like a road trip and stopping in certain places. So as you can see on the left top, that is one of our posters for this week. And our Monday is Redwood Day, so you dress up in about like hiking gear, NorCal attire. Tuesday is Hollywood, so you show up in your best red carpet outfit or SoCal. Wednesday is Desert Day, so it's like a Western wear attire. Thursday is Surf Day, where it's like beach themed. And Friday is a Gold Rush, because we'll be having our homecoming game on that day. And we want everyone to be spirited out at the rally and at the game, and in gold. So that's really cool. We're really excited for that. Because we are not allowed to use parades anymore, we've came up with a really cool idea of decorating our hallways. So just this Sunday, the ASB class was here to decorate every single hallway, class of 25, class of 24, so on and so on. Sorry, 25, 26, so on and so on. So we had a really good time, and rally rehearsal was on Sunday as well. And so some of the activities we'll be having during this week is we will have an activity every single day during our lunchtime that is surrounded around whatever Spirit Day that is. So today we had Dress to Impress. So we rolled out the red carpet and we had like a fashion show with all the students who are on the homecoming court. That was really fun. And the homecoming court counts on 3 students from each level, from each grade, except for the seniors. We have 4 for seniors. And we're really excited to do a lot of more fun stuff with them. To get homecoming started, we had our rally on Monday, and where we highlighted our dodgeball tournament finale. Kind of like similar to Morro Bay, we also have a tournament, and we had the winners of the students and our staff team playing that. Staff did win. So that was really fun for everyone to see. And we also announced our Grand Marshal, Mr. Blake Bristol, who will be announcing at the homecoming game. Some upcoming games are this football game this Friday with the homecoming ceremony. We're all really excited for that. And the homecoming dance will follow after that on Saturday. We also have a sectional opening and closing competition tomorrow here at school, which we're really excited about because we usually travel to other schools, but San Luis Obispo High School will be hosting it this year. And so we're really excited for that one. On the 10th, we'll be having our first barbecue of the year, so we're excited for that as well. It's always a great turnout. We get students involved, parents involved. It's a great turnout just for the community itself. We usually sell about 300 to 350 meals, and a portion of those meals are donated to families in need in the community. So we're really excited for that as well. And then speaking of our football games, I wanted to touch base on something that occurred last week before our game with Morro Bay. There was a video that was filmed by our class in response to Morro Bay's video, and I just want to share that we acknowledge that it was inappropriate, and I would like to formally apologize on behalf of SLO High and the ASB class. We filmed this while our ASB teacher, Mr. Stewart, was gone, and we thought that making a response video would create more excitement for this game. Because we love Morro Bay and everyone loves Morro Bay, we were really excited for this game, and because we're part of the same district, we're part of the same community, we just wanted to get that hype going because that's what we were really looking forward to, like playing with them and having the community come together as a whole. If you recall back to the first time I was here, I talked about ASB's core values, and one of them was love. And we truly do love Morro Bay. And another one of our core values is accountability. And as a collective class, we've discussed this, and we recognize that this wasn't the right thing to do. As we make mistakes, we are growing and learning, but we can only grow if we do something about this. So we've established a new system where only our ASB teacher will have control and access to what gets posted on any social media accounts that are professionally associated with SLO High. Again, we are deeply sorry, and we will remain mindful in the future. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, and we understand that you may have things going on, and I don't know, as a Hawthorne alum, you want to see what your classmates are doing, but your former school, but I understand, we certainly are understanding of your need to get on with homework and other commitments you may have. Thank you again. Thanks for coming this evening. So, Hawthorne, you're all here. We're so happy to see you. Yes, yes.
Well, I mean,
Thank
not
you for coming
not
this
all
evening.
of us, but
Many.
I do want to sincerely thank the students, teachers, and the parents who made this happen. Thank you guys so much for your support. This is incredible. Yeah, clap for the parents and the kids and the teachers. All right. So as you may know, Hawthorne is very mission and vision driven. And I talk about that each time we get to come share something with you. So as a reminder, at Hawthorne, every student will lead, achieve, and belong with high expectations and strategic support. Part of what that looks like at the beginning of the school year is that each of our classrooms co-construct, write together a mission statement. And this mission statement guides their work for the school year. So today, I simply invited some classrooms to share their class mission statement with you. So we're going to start with second grade, Mrs. Capilano's class. Thank you so much, Mrs. Capilano's class. All right, up next, we have some representatives from Mrs. King's class, third grade.
Accomplish our goals.
Great job, Mrs. King's class. Up next, we have some representatives from Miss Phelan's 5th grade class. Come on, 5th grade.
This class will be considerate of the ideas and feelings of others. We know that each of us learns differently. We will trust each other in our learning, allowing us to take risks and make mistakes. We will use tools appropriately and touch only things that belong to us. We will be on time, keep our workspace clean, and use good manners in order to provide a safe learning environment. In this class, we care about one another and will celebrate each other's strengths and coach one another when learning is hard. Doing this will provide a safe and fun learning environment for 5th graders.
All right, and finally, we have some representatives from Miss Kerr's 6th grade class.
This 6th grade year, we will be our best selves and show our best effort, no matter what. We will be leaders by including everyone and helping each other when needed. We will create a welcoming space for all learners to thrive and share and celebrate all of our differences. We will respect everyone's thoughts, feelings, ideas, and cultures. We can do it, slay.
I mean, yeah, our students, our teachers, the work that we're doing together is incredible. So I invite all of you to come out as often as possible and celebrate these amazing kids and their genius with us anytime. So the kids will now take questions or compliments.
Well, you were all I'm so impressed. We are really feel like we've gotten to know you a little bit and your school and what you're striving for. And it's amazing. We want the world to be like you. If you go forth and carry out your goals and your mission, we're going to be in a great spot. So, Mr. Buckman, did you have a question?
Oh,
Your light's on.
I know. Sorry, I have a statement, I guess, but I could ask a question. I recognize some of the students from the Student Senate. I don't know how many are here. And I just wanted to recognize them. And I wanted to recognize the number of parents who are here. That's just heartwarming. I really appreciate it. And also, if I'm not mistaken, we saw a second or third language. It was sign language being used. And I was very impressed with that. So I guess my question is, how did your parents do such a great job?
Well, what I'd like to do is take a break. The clock is gone. Oh, Mr. Clausen, I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to see if any of the students could tell us how they wrote those performances and like, how does the class come up with the song or saying for each grade. Yeah. Sixth graders look like they know.
What we need we're going to get you the microphone.
Yeah.
Mrs. Childs, she helped us out a lot. She came to our classroom. We had mission statement or lead time in the morning every day for, I believe, 3 or 4 days. And we started with sticky notes, then we formed phrases, and then we put them all up on the board. And Holland?
So we have this thing in our class. It's called
something. I kind of forgot. It's okay. But our treatment agreement, yeah. And it started off by us saying things that we want our teacher to do to us, what we want to do to teachers, what students would do to each other, and then what students would do to guests. And I think we kind of built off of that and kind of what Nelson said after that. So, yeah. So it was a really fun process. Like we all had ideas and then like we had different ideas and then we combined them and like edited. It was like a whole day process. And Nelson and Allie created the poster that we made. It's sadly not here, but I would like to shout them out for that. And our whole class really worked together and it was fun. And we like created movement and it was a really good time.
Thank you. Mr. Banfield, then Mr. Unger, then Mr. Clausen. Oh, okay.
I was gonna say one.
I just want to say again with Allie, Allie couldn't be here tonight because she has acrobatics, but she took the lead with our poster. It looks beautiful. So just round of applause for Allie.
We have some more from the board, if that's all right.
I just simply want to say what a wonderful feeling tone I'm getting tonight. What a wonderful group of students and parents. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mr. Unger.
Yeah, and this may be a question for the sixth graders. How do you enforce the goals that and the mission statement that you have for your classroom? Because I know sometimes people slip, you know, and they want, you know, we want to make sure that it's good for everybody. So when somebody slips, how do you bring them back? How are they invited back? How do you deal with that?
I mean, first of all, nobody slips at Hawthorne, but hypothetically.
Well, first of all, like everybody can make mistakes. And
we also practice it every morning. So that helps us. At the beginning, it was not that good, but now we've grown and we did it at one of our assemblies and it was really fun. Yeah. So everyone makes mistakes, and I feel like the mission statement helps us guide us towards not trying to make a mistake. I mean, I don't know how to explain that, but yeah. And I didn't say this earlier, but I'd like to thank Miss Kerr for like helping our whole class kind of with like the mission statement and like helping us along the way. And it's going to be a really good year and I'm excited. Yeah.
Hinton.
Yeah, don't you feel like you've created a wonderful community and you're learning all about community and participation, inclusion, and valuing what everybody has to say? I see them nodding. Yeah. All of you guys really learn to be part of a community. And sometimes adults need to learn how to do that too. And I'm sure that you're a shining example in our larger community of San Luis Obispo.
Mrs. Roger.
Yes, I'll piggyback a little bit on what Mrs. Hinton said. It's wonderful to see all of you here tonight. And for me, it helps me to remember why I do this work on this board.
Right.
It's for you. It's for all of you because I want the very best for you. So in the mission statements that you created for your classes, I hope that you will take those words and those ideas and concepts and take them out into the world. Because if people treated each other in the world the way you're learning to treat each other in your classes, things would be so wonderful. Thank you for coming tonight.
So I think you can tell how you have brightened our evening. We really appreciate it. It's so wonderful to see all of you, and thank you, students, teachers, and parents for taking the time. It is at this time, I know that you all need to get home and get on with your evenings. I'm showing 6:27. Let's take a break until 6:35. And that will give you time to get on with your evening, and then we'll get back to our meeting. Thank you again.
Great job.
Um, we are now back on our agenda and
Entonces ya regresamos a nuestra agenda.
on to correspondence. And at the time the agenda was published, no official correspondence had been received. We will now go into public comment. We have several written comment or some folks here tonight who would like to speak. If you would like to address the board, please fill out a yellow sheet on the back table and turn it in, and we will put you in the queue. We do this so that people who are present speak first. If you are interested in addressing us on Zoom or did a written comment, you will get one. You need to select which way you would like to address the board. Written comments and public are not available on the same topic. If you wish to speak with us on another agenda topic that appears later on in the agenda, we will save that for that point. Although we do know that this evening there are some who have said they want to speak on 7.03 Measure C update. We are going to include those in our general public comments here because we don't go to the public after our superintendent's updates. So those are being moved up into our general public comment that we will work on now. Mrs. Roger has put them in the order in which they've been received and will call your name. Please step up to the podium when your name has been called. You will be given 3 minutes in which to address the board. If you go over that time, we will let you know that your time is up. So on that, Mrs. Roger.
Thank you. Okay, I have taken these in the order received. And the first speaker is Keisha Nevejas, speaking on district standards, and it looks like intercom security.
Yes, ma'am. How's everybody doing tonight? Good evening. I know that you guys met me last time I came in. I'm going to introduce myself again. I'm Keisha Nevejas from Tech Time Communications. Last time I was here, I was having trouble finding a district standard for fire alarm. I do want to thank the district for their efforts and helping us with that. And they did provide that for us. And I want to say a special thank you to Mr. Pinkerton and Mr. Bonin for helping us with that. I also wanted to apologize if our inquiry caused any delay in any projects that were happening. That was not our intent. My only intent was to ensure the district was receiving fair and competitive bidding. On another note, positive note, because I know everything tonight, that was so inspirational. I want to keep it going. I do look forward to building our relationship in the future with you and remind you that we do also work on other things besides fire alarm. We do critical communication systems, intercom, and security door access control. If you need anything from us, please feel free to reach out, and we would love to do a demo for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lisa Bugrova.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Bugrova, and I'm here to encourage allocation of Measure C funds to help expand TEACH up to middle school. I attended TEACH in the late 1980s, and my oldest daughter is alumni, and I have my daughter Kat here, who is a current 4th grader.
I'm a student at Teach Elementary. I like Teach so far because we get to do lots of fun activities and projects, and I think we should expand Teach to middle school because we should have 2 options for 7th and 8th grade.
Our timing now is pretty ideal with SLOCA relocating and the Measure C funds not yet allocated, and the facility upgrades haven't been started. Since the facility upgrades have yet to occur, we have the ability to refocus funding on equipping the classrooms with the necessary upgrades to accommodate a larger portion of our students to have access to an alternative middle school of choice. We have a local model to pull from with Atascadero's Fine Arts Academy that already provides us a choice for 4th through 8th grade. And we hope to assist your board to provide a middle school choice and continue the exemplary education and inclusionary vision that TEACH has embodied since its inception. Our advocacy team for this effort is broad and well supported, and we look forward to continuing this conversation in the coming months so that this awesome idea becomes a reality. In closing, this effort is aligned with the district's strategic priorities. TEACH expansion would accelerate efforts to close achievement and opportunity gaps as another middle school choice expands access for more students to excel in 7th and 8th grade. It promotes student wellness and recognition that middle school social and emotional well-being is of utmost importance, and providing a choice of an inclusive and diverse educational setting that TEACH could achieve will serve our most sensitive kids who may flounder at the larger and more intense environments currently available in middle school. Expanding TEACH will help draw highly qualified staff, and it's an effective stewardship of our facility resources and will allow for a full use of a campus that has been mainly out of district use for years. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I have Curtis Addison on student safety.
Good evening. I wanted to bring up in January of 2018 in Slow High's Expressions, their student newspaper, was known as the sexual assault feature. Just cover a number of people who are victims of sexual harassment and assaults. On pages 8 and 9, feature about from personality to pariah, should predators be ostracized in society? Certain one, of course, I think should be ostracized, as well as how to report sexual harassment at Slow High. Really, of course, caught my attention is the actual feature, page 9. You'll notice there's actually no feature to be read. But here's what the students put in. Sexual harassment on campus. Due to privacy and legal reasons, we are not able to publish the article originally intended for this page. Expressions interviewed multiple students about their experiences with sexual harassment on campus, and we wish to underscore the prevalence and severity of these acts at San Luis Obispo High School. This again is dated January 12th, 2018. I take great umbrage with the statement that was published and stated of that sexual harassment was, of course, dealt in a timely and ethical manner, and clearly the students were stating otherwise, that was 6 years prior. Now, Mr. Brandau was there at the time. I'd love to see, of course, he was mentioned in that article. Odds are that, given that he was been being thrown out of bars, had a restraining order set against him and other things. My question is, what did Mr. O'Connor do in his time as principal up until that time? There were several allegations over years. He was known as a detail-oriented man. He actually fired 4 coaches when he first started because he wanted them to be on campus, wanted to be faculty and staff. So how in the heck did he let that slide? And then we get to Ms. Dallinger. Ms. Dallinger, who told my daughter, as well as Wilkerson's daughter, when they brought said allegations about different teachers, not to tell anyone. Now, we didn't know each other. I didn't know this until I saw Ms. Wilkerson state this. But why in the heck would an administrator come in between parents and their kids about such a severe allegation? And then finally, of course, is Mr. Dickinson. Seems like a swell, sweet enough guy, but I don't think he's got it in terms of handling such allegations. I don't know how you have a coaching session with a 40-something-year-old man about how to have boundaries with kids. I taught for 2 years abroad. I never had a conversation with my school about respecting boundaries. I think all of them shouldn't be here. I think not only is Mr. Brandau unfit to teach, but all of them are unfit to administrate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Chelsea Ruiz.
Hello, I'm Chelsea Ruiz, and I am a parent of 2 San Luis Coastal kids and teach parent alumni, and here to talk about the Grow Teach initiative, which I'm helping to organize, which for those of you who don't know, is a group of Teach supporters, current parents, former parents that are interested in seeing Teach expanded into a magnet middle school of choice. And we have 2 requests. The first one is we would love to have an update on Measure C and how that's going with the site in light of SLOCA's lease and when construction might begin. And the other request that we have is to open up a parent forum for Teach supporters to hear about the demand and the desire for Teach to expand. We would love to share with you the things that parents have been saying for 10 years plus about how they would love to see this happen. And I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of the wonderful student presentations that we've had today. I mean, as you guys all know, and I know, San Luis Coastal has exceptional schools and exceptional neighborhood schools. Those Morro Bay students are so articulate, and those Hawthorne children were just so wonderful. And we were very happy at our school of choice. We were very pleased, and it was an excruciatingly difficult decision when we did choose to switch to Teach. And it wasn't because our homeschool wasn't wonderful, but there were some things that the neighborhood schools are just not structured to be able to provide, that Teach is able to provide for those students that need it. And my child was struggling at our neighborhood school, and he absolutely flourished at Teach. And it really is a lifeline for students who have academic needs or social needs that just can't be met in the normal neighborhood school. So I just want to acknowledge that, we are big supporters of San Luis Coastal and think that we have just this wonderful gem in Teach, and would love to expand access to more students to be able to have that experience. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is Amber Wilkerson.
I want to publicly thank Linda, the SLO High School ASB representative, for her apology and accountability regarding the video. I sent that video to each of you this past week and asked you to take a look at it because I found it very offensive, and I wondered how the heck it ended up on Facebook on the ASB's website. What bothers me about her statement is that this student in high school was able to take accountability in front of a room full of people for a really misguided decision. And that's what your statement should have sounded like 2 weeks ago instead of the one that you read. 2 weeks ago, this board made a statement in which you thanked Roland Dickinson, Leslie O'Connor, and Desiree Dellinger for their prompt and proactive attention, which led to Jeff Brandau's upheld termination. As I sat and listened to the statement and read a similar statement put forth by Dr. Prater that same week on Parent Square, I kept asking myself the same question. Why did you feel the need to add insult to injury? Why didn't you just inform the public of the closed session agenda and leave it at that? Why did you go on and thank and give kudos to the administrators who we know allowed Jeff Brandau's behavior in the first place? My conclusion is that you continue to try to control the narrative and take advantage that there is still a population of parents and voters who are not aware of your actions, or should I say lack of action. You need the popular vote to get the next bond approved and to keep that board status quo. Well, I think your plan backfired. You see, the statement was bad publicity. You all did nothing. I mean, what did you do? Dr. Prater, you never met with us. You waited in the room next door when we met with Dan Block and the district's attorney, and he met with my daughter and questioned her. He explicitly told us he was going to go next door and meet with you and other attorneys and make a decision on Jeff Brandau. His recommendation is that he wouldn't get his job back. What exactly did O'Connor, Dickinson, and Dellinger do? Question the victims and ask them to keep secrets? Meet with Brandau first and never call the parents? Brush complaints and decade-long concerns under a proverbial rug? I think you are delusional by thinking they were proactive. They are guilty of aiding and abetting a predator. They actually should be held accountable as mandated reporters who failed to mandate and report. So go ahead and try to steer the narrative in your direction. I'm here for it. It only makes me louder. As a community, please vote for change. We are not only going to control the narrative, we're going to rewrite it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Alex Wilkerson.
As a father, my job is here to protect my family. Many of you are parents. You know this. What if someone took away your ability to keep your child safe, or more so, made your child more accessible to a predator? That is exactly what Leslie O'Connor, Desiree Dellinger, and Roland Dickinson did. Why would you publicly praise them? I have watched for the last 2 years my family change. I have watched my beautiful daughter change. I continue to watch my wife advocate for change and show up to teach for a district that didn't protect her own daughter. If I hung out with any of you and shared coffee and told a story about Jeff Brandau's behavior and how the district mismanaged it, you would be appalled, yet you'd sit here, and your silence and your participation in public statements like the one made last week demonstrates that you think you are on the side of right. Just so we are all clear, you are not. When you tuck your kids in tonight, or kiss your grandkids this weekend, or send them off to school or college, you'd better hope that the adults in charge, wherever they go, do a better job of protecting them than what you have done for protecting the girls and boys in our community. The statement you endorsed as a board was a bully attempt to shut us up and to steer the narrative to what a great job this district and administrators did. We have an entire community ready to vote, ready to show up, ready to hold the line. And until there is change, it all starts with acknowledging the district did nothing to protect our daughter. It was touching tonight to see the Hawthorne students show up and show their glee and enthusiasm for education. Their enthusiasm was heartwarming. I felt the energy they displayed, and the joy of learning was felt by the board. Many of you asked questions regarding their mission statement, how to recover from mistakes, and displayed great examples of accountability at such a young age. I do feel you all became a part of this board and part of education to make a positive change initially. I do want to let you know that you've all lost your way. You have all failed in your number one job, and that is to protect kids. It's saddening to see how far you have all drifted off target.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Maria Quinn, and we will require translation for this comment, and therefore 6 minutes will be allowed.
Vamos a darle 6 minutos.
Gracias, señora María. Bienvenida.
Buenas tardes.
Pues,
Por favor,
por favor, para el acta.
acepten mis más cordiales saludos. Me gustaría reconocer el esfuerzo y la dedicación de la señora Stephanie Sherper.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Cuen. Please accept my utmost gratitude. First of all, I would like to recognize the efforts of Mrs. Shepherd.
Como padres hemos tenido la oportunidad de expresar nuestras opiniones y hemos recibido comentarios valiosos subrayando el papel significativo que desempeñamos en el apoyo en el aprendizaje a nuestros estudiantes.
I would like to acknowledge the efforts and dedication. As parents, we have had the chance to express our thoughts and receive valuable feedback, highlighting the significant role we play in supporting our students' learning.
Durante nuestra reciente reunión de DILAC, tuvimos un tiempo agradable socializando y explorando el tema de la disciplina positiva para los adolescentes.
During our recent DLAC meeting, we had a delightful time engaging with one another while exploring the topic of positive discipline for adolescents.
También quiero mencionar que como padre involucrado he aprendido sobre los representantes del consejo directivo.
I also want to mention that as an involved parent, I have also gained insight into the representatives on the board of directors.
Agradezco especialmente al señor Buckman por su apoyo a las familias con estudiantes que están aprendiendo inglés.
I especially want to thank Mr. Bookman for his support to our families with students that are considered English learners.
Esperamos continuar siendo escuchados acerca de las necesidades actuales de las familias y apreciamos su continuo apoyo.
And we hope to continue have our voices heard regarding the current needs of families and appreciate your ongoing support.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Li Zhang.
How do we educate children today to be leaders for tomorrow and prepare them for industries and careers that haven't come to existence yet? As Tim Fay, the slow high teacher who recently went to SpaceX at Texas, said, the focus of education should be on building work ethic and curiosity, not necessarily skills. With the accelerated pace to cover the same curriculum, Teach Elementary has a broader and deeper approach toward that goal. Students are learning the same knowledge, utilizing both their analytical and social skills, honing interdisciplinary proficiency, while developing a meaningful bond with their peer and the community. My name is Li Zhang. My only child, Dekayla, has been in the San Luis Coastal School District since TK. She currently attends 4th grade in Teach. My daughter and I would like to advocate for the expansion of Teach to include 7th and 8th grade. In my 10-year-old daughter's own words, Teach pushes me to do the best that I can. My daughter used the word push that really resonates deeply with me. At home and at school, children grow and develop an increasing amount of independence over time. High school is widely considered the bridge transitioning students from learning by being pushed by teachers to learning by being led by professors in college and by advisors in grad school. Since the Teach education proves that elementary school students can thrive setting their own education schedule, learning driven by curiosity with less supervision and guidance, then an uninterrupted application of those principles through middle school should even better prepare our students. Pushing students to do the best that they can helps them build crucial skills that benefit them forever, from time management to the flexible thinking, using multimedia and cross disciplines. Teach and their staff has positioned themselves uniquely ready to offer the same education methodology from elementary school to middle school. I know that my daughter has been and will continue to thrive with this education approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Becca Banfield.
Evening. Thank you so much for being here and just taking the time to listen. My name is Becca Banfield, and I'm a parent of 4 children living in the SLC USD school district. I have a 4th grader at Teach Elementary School, and my now 9th grade daughter attended and graduated from Teach. Both have had very positive experiences there. For my 4th only for so long, but he comes home so happy every day and just sharing and excited about what he's learning. We've loved the school that I have 4 and they're different schools. And so we love our SLC-USD schools here. And so I recognize, like in our family, we live that not every school fits for each kid. We kind of go by that motto of just finding what works for each kid and what feels like the best fit. So we love all of those schools that our children have attended and do attend now. But Teach has been really special to our family. Teach has challenged my Teach children who have gone there in really unique ways. That I believe especially have prepared our daughter for the rigorous expectations that she now faces as a 9th grader. Our family will be forever grateful to Teach for the project-based learning, the time management skills, and the high expectations that it provided our daughter and is now providing to our son. I'm one of many parents who would love to see Teach expand to include 7th and 8th grade. It especially blesses those students who are ready for more of a challenge in certain areas that they might not be receiving at some of the other SLC-USD schools. It would also alleviate Laguna Middle School, which is currently burdened with a high volume of students. We have an opportunity to prioritize the children in our community in an impactful way right now. Please seriously consider the expansion of Teach to encompass 4th through 8th grade as part of your thoughtfulness regarding Measure C. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else present in the room who would like to address the board at this time? Yes.
Good evening. I'm Jackie Lowe. I just wanted to comment on, it sounds like Teach has a lot going on, and I hear the plight of the parents, and I just sat there thinking of my students who have not participated in Teach's program, and I can't help but think, what are we doing differently at Teach that we can't also be providing to all students, just kind of putting on an equity lens. I currently have a student at C.L. Smith who is struggling, and I'm just seeing him slowly disengage, and it's disheartening. But I also want him to be a part of our neighborhood community. So I'm just wondering how many other students are there. And so while I appreciate people who are advocating for Teach to expand for their students, I can't help but think of the students that are left out and why we are not creating a more global approach with project-based learning in elementary schools. So I just feel like the logic for Teach should then transfer to everyone else. I also wanted to comment on, I know I did this last board meeting, but I again want to reiterate, I found the statement that was read to be really in bad form. I really think you guys messed this one up. And I think the right thing to do to heal things with the community is to acknowledge that the extra pointed comments towards the Wilkerson family was really unnecessary. And I think that we need to evolve our practices. It didn't need to be said. And so just wanted to put that out there. I still think you owe them an apology. And just like our students modeled for us what it's like to take accountability for behavior, I'd like to see this out of the adults. Thank you.
Thank you. You going to Zoom or shall I go? Okay, I have written public comment, several items of it. So I'll begin now. The first comment is from Michelle Tesoriero, and she writes, "My name is Michelle Tesoriero, and I have 2 kids in the San Luis Coastal Unified School District. We are hoping to secure our children spots at Teach Elementary School and would love to see it expand to include 7th and 8th grade. Teach provides a wonderful format for learning that greatly serves the children in our community. This would also help alleviate our impacted Laguna Middle School. I strongly urge you to consider using Measure C to help facilitate this expansion, especially in light of the SLOCA site becoming available. Thank you for your time." Next is Jamie St. Cyr. This comment is in reference to agenda item 7.03, Measure C update. My name is Jamie St. Cyr, pronounced St. Cyr, and I have 2 children that have gone through the San Luis Coastal Unified School District and 2 that are currently attending. We love Teach Elementary School and would love to see it expand to include 7th and 8th grade. Teach provides a wonderful format for learning that greatly serves the children in our community. Expanding Teach Elementary would also help alleviate our impacted Laguna Middle School. Having already experienced Teach through our older children, I speak from experience when I say having the additional 7th and 8th grades would be a great addition for the school and the experiences of the children attending. I strongly urge you to consider using Measure C to help facilitate this expansion, especially in light of the SLOCA site becoming available. Next is Neil Eckhart. Dear members of the SLC-USD School Board, I hope this message finds you well. My name is Neil Eckhart. I am a high school mathematics teacher at Pioneer Valley High School in Santa Maria. I am also a former employee of SLC-USD, where I worked as a TOSA on data and assessment for the district. I'm writing to express my support for the expansion of Teach Elementary to include 7th and 8th grades, as discussed in agenda item 7.03 regarding the Measure C update. As a parent of a current student at Teach Elementary, I have witnessed firsthand the positive impact this school has had on our son and community. Project-based learning, proximity to Cal Poly and exciting partnerships with some of their departments, and exposure to higher learning all make a huge impact these formative years, not to mention the wonderful and supportive staff and principal. Expanding the school to include the upper grades would provide our children with a seamless transition into middle school while maintaining the strong sense of community and support that Teach offers. School choice is vital for our community, especially since we currently have only one local middle school option. Expanding Teach Elementary would not only enhance educational opportunities for our children, but foster a more diverse and dynamic learning environment. I strongly encourage the board to consider using funds from Measure C to facilitate this expansion by procuring the neighboring SLOCA site, which will soon be available. This investment in our children's education will not only benefit current students, but will also attract new families to our district, enhancing our community as a whole. Thank you for your time and consideration. I hope you will support this important initiative that will greatly benefit our students and the wider community. Next is Cassia Parra. My name is Cassia Parra, and I have 1 kid in the San Luis Coastal Unified School District. We love Teach Elementary School and would love to see it expand to include 7th and 8th grade. Teach provides a wonderful format for learning that greatly serves the children in our community. This would also help alleviate our impacted Laguna Middle School. I strongly urge you to consider using Measure C to help facilitate this expansion, especially in light of the SLOCA site becoming available. Lisette Rivera. And dear members of the SLC-USD School Board, I am hoping this message finds you well. I am writing to express my support for the expansion of Teach Elementary to include 7th and 8th grades, as discussed in agenda item 7.03 regarding the Measure C update. As a parent of a current student at Teach Elementary, I have witnessed firsthand the positive impact this school has had on our son and community. Project-based learning, proximity to Cal Poly, and exciting partnerships with some of their departments, and exposure to higher learning all make a huge impact these formative years, not to mention the wonderful and supportive staff and principal. Expanding the school to include the upper grades would provide our children with a seamless transition to middle school while maintaining the strong sense of community and support that Teach offers. School choice is vital for our community, especially since we currently have only one local middle school option. Expanding Teach Elementary would not only enhance the educational opportunities for our children, but also foster a more diverse and dynamic learning environment. I strongly encourage the board to consider using funds for Measure C to facilitate this expansion by procuring the neighboring Sloka site, which will soon be available. This investment in our children's education will not only benefit current students, but will also attract new families to our district, enhancing our community as a whole. Thank you for your time and consideration. I hope you will support this important initiative that will greatly benefit our students and the wider community. Lexi Bell. My name is Lexi Bell, and I have 2 kids in the San Luis Coastal Unified School District. One completed 4th through 6th grades at Teach, and another is just starting. We love Teach Elementary School and would love to see it expand to include 7th and 8th grade. Teach provides an engaging format for learning that greatly serves the children in our community. Teach often serves as a place to test innovative approaches that can spread to the rest of the district, as is the case with the Innovation Labs. I strongly urge you to consider using Measure C to help facilitate this expansion, especially in light of the Sloka site becoming available.
Thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to address the board at this time? All right, seeing no one, thank you. All right, we will now move on to our superintendent's updates. First, we have business and budget update. Mr. Pinkerton.
Yeah, so just a couple of quick things to share with the board tonight. I finished my boundary meetings at all the PTAs in town. So I was able to go, variety of meeting, and I'll be sharing that information with the board at an upcoming meeting and the public as well. And hopefully bring some type of decision forward to the board in November, considering some boundary changes. That said, we also soft launched our sustainability website. So share that with the board. I'm going to be sharing that information with the parents, community, as well as staff. My hope is that this will, especially the staff part and the curriculum instruction aspect of it, will kind of get that conversation going so that we can then get the kids and the teachers to give us more information to continue to add and build that site. So hopefully it was a positive thing. If you had a chance to look through it, if not, please do, as we move forward and try to make a difference in our community.
Thank you. Next is educational services update, Ms. Yamashita.
Good evening, board. I wanted to share some exciting highlights from the past couple weeks. Last week on Friday, Dr. Prater got to bring together our student senate. Mr. Buckman and Miss Roger were there, and Jimmy Simpson from Youth Truth led about sharing some data with our students and families and staff, our perception data. And our schools worked to collaboratively make a plan to increase participation in the Youth Truth survey, which just opened for everyone this week. It runs through the 25th of October. So I'd like to also encourage all the parents and families and staff that may be online to go ahead and log in and take your Youth Truth and LCAP survey for our families this year. Also, Mrs. Quinn already mentioned the fantastic parent education night we had with our DLAC, and Mr. Buckman was able to attend. We invited, Ms. Shepard invited Tony Orozco from Disciplina Positiva, which is positive discipline, to come and talk. I also a shout out to our principals and staff members that came and spent their time. Actually, Mr. Huizar and his wife, Beatrice Huizar, were some of the actors portraying parenting with a teen child about their cell phone. It was fantastic. I've also had numerous site visits. We had a parent leader meeting with our PTA leaders from all the various schools, and it helped us create a PTA booster FAQ answer sheet that we're now utilizing. And I collaborated with the foundation on elementary athletics, which you know is kicking off. We started volleyball for girls 2 weeks ago, and now boys soccer started today. and cross country will be coming up in a couple weeks. We also were discussing the new vision for Next Gen. We had brought together a cohort a couple of years ago as 7th graders, and they have now entered 9th grade at SLO High and Morro Bay High. And we are looking to round up a new cohort of Next Gen scholars. So we're working with Marcy Badal, Artosa, and Mr. Neff, and Christine Robertson and I. More information to come at the SLCEF Foundation benefit that's coming up on October 17th or 24th. 17th. I'd like to. I will be there celebrating with our foundation members and many of you, I'm sure, the great work of the programs that our foundation gets to help us with. And finally, I got to attend virtually an ISTE training about artificial intelligence. And there was a presenter from Utah's State Board of Education talking about the work they're doing statewide with educators and just a wealth of resources we're going to be working to share out.
Thank you. On to Measure C.
Yeah, on the Measure C front, we have a study session next week. We didn't get to our budgets, estimates, so on at our last meeting, so we'll be reviewing those, kind of overall look at Measure C, projects, costs, expenses, those types of things. So I'm happy to walk the board through that and how we develop those. And then lastly, we were able to, Chris Bond and myself were able to actually attend what's called a charrette. So we went to RM, who is doing the design for Baywood Elementary School. And so they basically get a bunch of architects, engineers, everybody from the architect group together in a big room. They divide them up into 4s. They give them kind of the site plan, what the needs are, the number of classrooms, buildings, so on, and they just have at it. How would you develop it? And so from there, those 18 designs that we got, we narrowed it down to 4. With the goal then of we met on Monday with the principal there. So just kind of molding those ideas, hopefully getting some type of, just different options that then we can present to the staff and the public, right? So that's kind of the phasing that we're going through. But it was really, really cool to be part of that, to kind of watch the architects go to work and different ideas and what works and what doesn't, and to see that in action.
Great, thank you. All right, we will now move on to a public hearing, item 8.01, which is our determination of sufficient textbooks and instructional materials. Anything you wanted to say?
Good evening, board. We're just here because yearly we are required to do an audit and make a determination on whether or not we have sufficient textbooks and or materials. And we are pleased to report that the district is currently sufficient in all required areas.
So with that is required by Ed Code and law, this has to be open to public comment in a public hearing form.
Right.
So I'll have to go ahead and start.
Yes. So I am now opening the public hearing. Public. Any public comment on this topic? No one in the room? Anyone on Zoom, Ms. Dawson? All right. Then the public hearing is now closed. Thank you. Right, next is 9.01, which is a resolution regarding assignments outside credential authorization. And I see Dr. Puccia approaching.
Good evening. This is on? Good. Yes, thank you very much, Board of Education, for your time this evening. So annually, we have a number of teachers who serve in programs outside of their core credential area. A typical example is social studies teacher who coaches football. So that's a PE class. They don't have a PE credential, so we have to seek board approval through this process for an individual teaching outside of the credential. This comes into play in the spring when CalPADS uploads all of our data and determines that the folks that we have in classes have the appropriate credentials and or meet specific standards that are set out by Ed Code. that allow them to teach at least one section outside of that area. So that's what you have in front of you tonight for your consideration.
Thank you. I'd like to go to the public to see if anyone has a comment on this item. No one in the room, no one on Zoom. Okay, we'll come back to the board. This is a resolution. And Mr. Buckman.
I'd like to move to approve resolution 042425.
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Buckman, a second by Mrs. Roger. Any further discussion? Mr. Banfield, did you have? Okay, then we'll, Mr. Banfield, since your light is on, your vote?
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton?
Yes.
Mr. Buckman?
Yes.
Mr. Clausen?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mrs. Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. All right, thank you. All right. Next is, we're on to a couple of discussion items, the first of which is 10.01 with regard to our safety systems review. Mr. Pinkerton.
Yeah, so every year we come forward with the board and just talk about safety, kind of what updates are happening, what's going on in terms of the district. You know, it was about 8 or 9 years ago, I think, that we went to, Chris Bond and myself went to our first Safe Schools Summit. We basically kind of rewrote our safety systems, our safety policies. We did the pillars at those times. Post-COVID, we hired Resolute to come in, really dig into our safety plans, update them. So I feel really good about our safety templates and, you know, all encompassing and reunification plans and what you do in each section. And, you know, our schools do a wonderful job of doing drills on an annual basis, on a monthly basis, depending on what the drill is, to make sure that our teachers, our staff, our parents are aware of what's happening. All that said, we have a tragedy like what happened in Georgia in September, and that just brought it every time it happens, it brings everybody's attention to safety of students, right? So though we had kind of a small safety website, we decided to enhance it, show everybody, hey, here's what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it. So I'm going to walk you through that really quick. Just kind of give you a brief overview. But I will tell you two things that we did add to the safety plans this year. And these were mandated. So we do anything that's legally binding, we add to our plan. So the first one was opioid overdose. So having a plan in place for a suspected opioid overdose at one of our schools. We, of course, our nurses, our schools brought Narcan into our schools last year. Our nurses kind of, along with Chris Dowler, kind of got those out to the sites, trained staff, those types of things in terms of it. So that whole section is in our first aid section that's there. And then the second aspect is something that we needed to build throughout our plan, which was access and really functional needs adaptations, they're called. So in the case of an emergency, what are we doing with somebody in a wheelchair? What are we doing with somebody who's pregnant on staff? What are we doing with our EL learners, right? Oftentimes we'll have a disaster midday, some, flood alert, and we'll decide, hey, we're gonna go ahead and let everyone leave at 1 o'clock. All the high school kids will get to go home. But what about the kids without transportation? What about the kids who don't have a cell phone to call home? So those are the types of things that throughout the plan, you'll see that we've added that language in so that principals, staff are thinking about those things prior to these events happening. Those are the two main things that were legally binding. We will be adding this coming year, coming up with what's called an instructional continuity plan. It's a new requirement that will be due July 1st, 2025. And that's basically, if we have a shutdown of school for some reason, how do we ensure that we get instruction up and running? I want to say it's within 3 to 5 days. So we are in a much better place to do that as a school district now with one-to-one devices for all of our students, Zoom, all those things that we have, right? So, but we'll be working on that. That'll be something that will probably be a union conversation as well, I would assume, right, in terms of contracts and how that unfolds, how that works. But that will be a plan that we'll work on and put in place for our safety plans for next school year, right? And then the other thing that came up, which just recently was really how do we deal with heat advisories? Heat illness, right? So every year we have our week, 2 weeks in the fall, we have a week, 2 weeks in the spring, right? So, after the first week of the really hot weather, we got to get in front of this. We had a few issues at some of our schools. Staff, like, what do we do? How do we deal with it? So we've put in a whole section now on heat illness, what to do. You might have seen a parent square that went out on Monday, right, saying, hey, here are the heat indexes. That's supposed to be, for this week right now, mild, but moderate. So along with some recommendations about what to do with those heat indexes, more hydration, less activity outside, those types of things. So just really helping guide our staff in those ways. So those are safety plans, updates that are in. Those plans are going to come to you in about a month. Those will be in consent agenda, just like we always do every year. But I have to give the sites time to go through school site councils, get them approved, and those types of things. So that's why they're not presented tonight for approval, but they're coming. So again, the safety page, just to really quick run you through it. And can I run it? Will throw me on. Can I share on my side? Okay. Just not turned on, so I'm gonna send request to you. Try again. Got it. All right, so safety page itself, and again, we wanted to kind of just make it a one-stop shop for everything that's going on in terms of safety. If you go to district departments right here, you'll see the drop-down menu. Safety is right there. This is the page itself. Two of the main things we did when we started kind of our new safety plans and kind of tied in was the report a concern bully button, right? Sharing that with kids. They go around to every classroom and they talk about it with students. They share it. It's visible on every single, our website pages, right? So that people can let me know. I know that it works because I get about 130, 120 a year of reports that come into me, right? And it's everything from Johnny pushed me at lunch to real concerns about kids, about families. And so those are things that, just so you know, I receive. I personally get those no matter what time of day it is, and I send them to the principal. I alert, if it's something that's really a danger, inherently we'll alert law enforcement right away, right? For the most part, it's forwarding that message to the principal at site. 99% of the time, they're able to talk with the kids before they leave the school day, which is great, right? The rapid response, talk to kids, hey, thanks for letting me know what's going on. And then the principal will, after meeting with the student, the kids, wrapping up the information, the investigation into the concern or report, will send me kind of a little synopsis of what happened. And so then I keep all of that data, right? So it's kind of an ongoing record. We know what's happening, see if things are repeating or how things are going through. But the positive of that, again, anonymous, we don't look to see who it is, right? But they can put their name. They can put who they are if they want to be contacted or if they want a response or not. But again, even if they don't, we still follow through with what the concern or the bully concern is. Mr. Banfield.
Well, yeah.
About that?
Why are you the one receiving?
So for a couple of reasons. Honestly, it's they have companies that do it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's just I know who the players are. I know who to send it to. I know how to get it going. I know who the SROs are, so I can contact the individuals pretty quickly. There's some detriments of having to be an outside agency. LuCMR recently with the one that they had. So it just works. It works well. And I keep track of that. I get to see the responses as well, right? So having me thorough knowledge, I tie in Eric, Lisa, Stephanie, Dan if I need to, right? Greg, depending on what the concern is. So it's just being able to do that, wrap that around. It's worked well, and I don't mind doing it. So for me, it ensures that we get response if I'm the one that's taking those. So again, as part of that, we've really strived, right, to have safe and inclusive environments. You saw the kids today, kind of what's happening, the leader in me, that spreading that around schools, right? That's what you're seeing, right? You're seeing that leadership building in our schools, which is fantastic. Our ASB president, at SLO High, unbelievable, right? In terms of what these kids are able to do and work through. In terms of available supports to parents, you'll see a list that goes through, right, of all the things that we're trying to do. Like we talked about, there's actually text to tip. We have our safe sports policy now that goes out quarterly before fall, winter, spring sports, right, summertime, letting students, parents know our expectations, our coaches, our expectations for relationships in sports and sportsmanship, those types of things. That's something we continue to work on. Dr. Prater continues to work on. And you know, it's something we can always improve. We do our classroom discipline talks at the elementary level. It's more of a discipline assemblies, talk to kids about expectations, rules, behavior, those types of things, right? All the way down to opening our wellness centers, our mental health therapists. We have a new, I know Janet will share with the board, but we have a new online resource for all parents in terms of counseling support that we'll be putting out and sharing with the community. I think in this next newsletter as well. All that said, so that's again all resources. We also have a lot of training that we do with our staff on an annual basis. So all staff are child abuse and neglect reporters, right? We are mandated reporters. So there's every single person in our organization has to go through that training. My secretary, Jessica Mueller, oversees to ensure that every single person does that training and does follow up with the site leaders if they haven't received, we haven't received that they finished it. This year we added an appropriate staff and student relationships module, just what that means, what that is. Everyone goes through a sexual harassment prevention training. Administrators every 2 years have a mandated legal kind of bigger sexual harassment training that goes on with our attorneys. And then this year we've also added 2 more trainings, as if those weren't enough for our staff. But we have the new Title IX rules and regulations that came out in July that the board knows about that we implemented here. And then we also have our workplace violence prevention training and program that we set up with Dr. Pachia and his staff to oversee any of the new requirements and laws regarding workplace violence. So again, a lot going on. We've had a lot of trauma-informed training as well for our staff by experts in the field, and that continues. I believe even the secondary teachers are getting another round of that coming up in a couple of months. We have wonderful relationships with our school resource officers, both at San Luis Obispo High School and Morro Bay High School. The district actually pays for those resource officers to be in our district. The sheriff's office also has resource officers for the sheriff areas that are tied in. But again, being able to just call middle of the night, 10 o'clock, get a concern, knowing that person's cell phone number, tying them in, right? If there is a concern, hey, we need to get this handled tonight or before. We've had a few where, again, tonight you receive a concern and we actually have the PD go to the kid's house right away, find what's going on, do a threat assessment, those types of things if needed, to ensure that everything is going to be safe for everyone in the morning, right? In terms of infrastructure, it's really unbelievable how we're able to communicate now with Parent Square. I mean, to think that we've gotten so just accustomed to be able to, hey, we can send out a newsletter, we can call people, we can send an email, we can do all 3 at the same time, right? And so that ability for us to just quickly communicate. Today we had a swarm of bees at Los Ranchos and did a shelter in place, right? So James, let your parents know so they don't worry, right? They hear shelter in place. Yeah, it was bees, right? There's a beehive moving, bee group moving through. But again, James is able to share that message with his parents, let them know, be aware when we have pickup today, this is what happened and why it happened. So it's really a positive thing to be able to communicate as much as we can. Again, out of all those things, we've had vaping monitors in our restrooms at both comprehensive high schools, which have been very helpful to dropping those rates of vaping and just any type of tobacco use or drug use on campus. And that's really a kid thing that we heard from. Kids wanted to go to the bathroom and not have to worry about what's happening, right? So that by having those in place, it definitely has helped. We've added perimeter fencing around all sites. Again, supervision mapping. Resolute came out, worked with our sites to look at all supervision and what the needs were, met with principals and staff around that. And of course, we have our facility modernizations with Measure C and Measure D. Again, just the perimeter fencing itself breeds a little bit of security, right? At most sites, people feel good about that. Making people come into one location, one entry point on campus. And then really, I can't underemphasize the use of our video surveillance and how important that is. We had a bike stolen in front of Pacific Beach today, and we were able to apprehend the person and get the bike back to the student within 15 minutes. So it's nice having that. And so we use those all the time in terms of just having video, being able to look around campuses. We don't have it perfectly at all of our sites yet, but with Measure C, that's something that we're adding as we go through. Our IT department works closely with our architects and our building department to make sure that we have that in place. Again, just kind of lastly, we see our district safety plans. You know, we have an overall gigantic district plan. We have our mental health and wellness plan. We have our hazard mitigation plan for natural disasters. We have our school site safety plans, which you'll be approving in a month. We have our safe sports policy. And of course, we have our Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant response. We actually did that training. That's every 2 years as well in August. And went through, met with the people from the federal government, the nuclear regulation group, and kind of walked through our training. In particular, what I would tell the board is it's really our bus drivers and the ability for Philip Tarver, our lead supervisor there, to get the information out. We have monitors that monitor the amount of the levels in the air, and just a whole system that's put in place to protect our drivers as they go and they get kids and they take them to whatever safe location we need to go. For us, it's Paso Robles. Again, lastly, on the right, you'll see some counseling mental health resources there for parents and families and what we have in place. We have our health and wellness as well, and also just culture, community, and climate aspects. We know Student Senate last week, it's grown in numbers, just a huge influence. I know a couple of board members were able to attend. That just continues to grow and be a popular thing that for Dr. Prater to see, kind of get that pulse of what's happening at our school sites. We do have, and I have to tell you, I love the fact that it's kind of this little button at the bottom now, the COVID information that we're not having to live through, and you know, all those types of things, right? It's nice to not have that be the feature story at the beginning of the page. There's a lot of other safety plans you might not think about, right? Everything from bloodborne pathogen plan to, again, heat illness prevention for our employees to injury illness prevention. And then lastly, we do have a safety committee in our district that's really staff focused to make our workplace a safe place. So Steve Stewart runs that. We have representatives from CSEA, SEIU, SLCTA, and they meet on a monthly basis. We do our safety newsletters that go out monthly, our safety tests that go out monthly for our employees to do. And that works really in collaboration with SITE, which is our workers' compensation group. So a lot goes into safety, right? Safety is not something that ends. The plan isn't over. As we said, we just added 3 items this year. We'll continue to add more, just so you know. I had a member of the public reach out to me 2 weeks ago and said, hey, listen, we had a student incident where they thought a van was following them, right? What do you do for student safety, you know, kind of stranger danger? So I asked all the principals, do we do anything for that? And we don't really. So that's something for us to, hey, talk with kids, maybe that beginning of the year assembly, kids that walk to school by themselves, right? What do you do if something happens like that? So again, schools are asked to do a lot, right? Every year, more and more in terms of what we're expected to do. But these are things that, of course, we focus on, especially when it comes to student safety. We want to make sure that we're preparing our kids and helping them and letting them know that we're here to help them and support them. But a huge cadre of things we're doing for kids to ensure that they're safe, right? And hopefully that comes out and our parents, our community, our staff, our students can see that when they look at this safety page.
I'd like to see if there's anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this topic. No one in the room, no one online. I see Mr. Clausen and Mr. Unger.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the detailed overview. There's a lot on the site there. I think it'd be difficult to cover the topic of security in the board setting here without, you know, at least acknowledging and speaking to the feedback from the community and the fact that, you know, there's a portion of the community that talks to us regularly about the fact that safety in our secondary schools is something they're concerned about.
Sure.
We had a parent speak to an example from 2018. Within the context of that topic, can you speak to how safety has evolved, what we've done? Are we improving and changing? Are we creating a safer environment? How are we ensuring safety for the parents out there that don't know and aren't sure and feel there's reasons to ask and question?
Sure.
I think this is the right forum to speak to that.
Yep.
If we can, yeah.
See, I mean, that's a broad question, right? In terms of all aspects, because that specific one was sexual attacks or the article that was referred to earlier today.
Right, but you spoke to like mandated reporter training
Yeah,
in your
right, in terms of
presentation
some of
here.
those
So,
types of things. Sure,
so
absolutely,
I
yeah.
mean, let me do a more specific question then.
Okay.
So, if I was the parent that was here earlier pointing to an article from 2018, how should I have confidence that in 2024 things are different or better than 2018, or should I be concerned that that article from 6 years ago still would stand today?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily, I mean, twofold, I would say. I don't know that it was that bad in 2018 in terms of the article itself and what the article had in it. Listen,
Sorry,
students
there was not actually an article in that example. It was
students
social
can
contempt
write
article, but-
about anything in any articles. And
Yeah.
throughout the years, we've seen students write about a variety of things that I don't necessarily agree with their stance or what comes into that for that specific one. What I would tell you is that we are definitely on to answer your question, I think we are on a heightened alert in our district right now, right? And really anywhere in the United States, I would say in the world, right, about safety. So what happened in Georgia in September, right? And every time something like that happens, right, it just brings you back. It's things that keep us, Dr. Prater, myself, the cabinet team up at night.
Yeah.
Where we're, what's the first thing I do in the morning when I wake up? I look at my phone. I see if there's a report of concern or a bully button before anyone enters any of our campuses every single morning, right? So that kind of heightened concern around those things. Again,
yeah, no,
we also
physical security is a real problem, and
we also
get
have the
that.
policies though
Yeah.
to keep going, right? And that's like I would say definitely the implementation of the safe sports policy was a huge add. So on that standpoint, yes, I believe we are better today than we were in maybe 2018 because we've added that policy, because we're having those coaches, parents, student meetings on a quarterly basis. So that's something that definitely has improved maybe from that time period to today.
So I guess just to be specific, obviously members of the community are giving us feedback on perceptions about student safety, mental health, particularly at the secondary schools. And I think this is an opportunity for us to try to address what we're doing there and where there's still opportunities. And I mean, whenever there's community concern, I think the optimal outcome is that we evolve until there's agreement that everything possible is being done.
Sure.
And I know everyone here cares about this and is trying. And I guess I'm trying to find some synergy between the concerns and the policies in progress to see if we're getting there, if there's more we can do, and maybe putting you on the spot. But I mean, it's a topic obviously that is at hand regularly.
Yeah. Again, you're gonna when parents have a specific concern or issue that happens with their child, with their particular child, they're going to be very strong, opinionated, right? Because it's their child, they own it, it's their child, and that doesn't mean that that's happening throughout or happening all over the place, right? It can vary, right, in terms of those things. That said, we try to put systems around to make sure that all students are safe, right, throughout. That said, society is also changing. So that's the other aspect of this where, TikTok, I mean, we've had, I think, over 20 complaints about threat assessments or possible threats over the past month after the Georgia case that happened. And so a lot of that it's technology driven. Kids looking on TikTok, seeing something and then sharing it with others. And then we get the concern, hey, what's going on? So your policies have to continue to change, adapt over time. So our safety plan isn't perfect.
Sure. Yeah. So I think what I'm getting to is, support for our administrators to handle complex situations.
Sure. Tough.
Training for our staff to identify situations that need to be raised and flagged, communication channels. And I know those are things we're doing.
Yeah.
I know those are things that are also being questioned. And I just, I'm just pushing to make sure we do as much as we can there.
Sure. Absolutely.
So I see Dr. Prater's light on.
Jump in.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I mean, this is an important topic. I understand the emotions that are coming to that podium every board meeting.
Sure.
And those emotions are certainly understandable. However, some of that is being projected onto us, and we are acting as quickly and as thoroughly as we possibly can. And it's the strangest thing because we are doing more now, and we have been over the last several years, to implement safety measures and build training and build capacity among our staff, from administration to teachers, to coaches, to athletic directors, to custodians. We have built an apparatus that is unlike anything I've ever known. And we are communicating those things out. In fact, we talk about it every single week regarding our Title IX training and our Title IX logs that we are keeping when people have concerns and share them with us from the site on up. And so we are following those meticulously, as we are with workplace violence. Any mention of workplace violence, any mention of a concern, I too wake up in the morning and look at my phone because Mr. Pinkerton will send me the report of concern. So I'm seeing it as well. And we are in regular communication throughout this organization, from the site up to the DO. I feel like one group is looking back, and we are trying to understand what happened, resolve it responsibly and thoroughly. And I feel that we are much better now than we've ever been. We have staff that are trained. We have heightened, as Mr. Pinkerton said, a level of awareness that I've never seen before. And we continue to do that. We've had 25, maybe 26 threat assessments in the first 6 weeks of school. I'll say that one more time. 25 threat assessments. That means we have a team of people looking into a single event at any one of our 15 campuses. Last year alone, we had about 25. In the first 6 weeks of school this year, we've had that many. I share that with you because the system's working and the world's changing. We have doubled, even tripled our counseling support over the last several years. We have created wellness centers, and they are being populated with kids. So I know we're on the right track. I know what we're doing is in fact working on a day-to-day basis. But it's hard to defend ourselves looking back to 2018.
Well,
Sure. And that's why my question is about what are we doing in the future? And I think regardless of the past, doing the future better and doing the future as well as possible is something I think we all agree on, right?
And I'm telling you, we are.
Right. And so I'm just kind of asking to see
That's
that
it.
vision and hear those things.
That's
and
it.
Understand that that's happening. And I think doing the future right is absolutely a great focus.
Yep.
Which is why we put this page together to kind of show all those things that we're
Yeah, no, my
trying to
concern with
accomplish,
the
right?
page is
And share.
it's so comprehensive
Uh-huh.
that it kind of, when you look at it, you can't tell what's new, what's evolved. Like there's things that we're doing that are new that there should be some light on the fact that there's improvement and evolution, I think. And I guess I was maybe I was trying to give an opportunity to highlight those things where they exist and see what you thought those were. So, yeah. Well done.
Mr. Unger and then Mrs. Hinton.
So kind of, I'm actually going to follow a little bit along with what you're talking about. So what we've been talking about here a lot, and what I've been hearing is responses, the staff is doing this, the staff is doing that, we're doing this and for the staff and through our policies, which is clearly important as we look at how things trickle down through the system. But I'm also wondering, what do we do? And this may not be a question that can be answered today. I don't think it can be, but what are we doing at the school sites to make people understand that certain behaviors are not acceptable, that the things that people thought were cute, the things that people thought they could get away with a couple of years ago are absolutely not appropriate. How are we thinking about changing the culture of the schools so that there is the type of respect that we saw the kids talking about from Hawthorne today? And then I have another more specific question for you.
If you like, you can. I have a lot to say on that too.
Two things that come to my mind, Mr. Unger, are we have a collective set of Google Slides trainings that are shared with our principals to deliver to their staffs every school year. And there are several slides that deal with discussions related to appropriate staff to staff conduct, as well as staff and student conduct. So that is one of the areas we ensure we regularly discuss with our staff, the changing nature of what's acceptable in the workplace, et cetera. We also held a training with our administrators last school year with our attorneys present on exactly the parameters of sexual harassment and what it is, what it isn't, what to do if you get a report, how to investigate appropriately and fairly. That's something new. We are also expanding the safe sports policy. By January, you'll be receiving our new extracurricular, co-curricular policy. So we are expanding the safe sports policies beyond just sports to all of our extracurricular activities like theater, band, etc. And then for our students, through our PBIS work at the elementaries and middle schools, and then our advisory tutorials at our high schools, is an opportunity to discuss with students appropriate and inappropriate behaviors. The importance of consent, etc., is also covered in our health curriculum, as well as the Title IX trainings with the updated policies that just got passed this past July. And then we'll be bringing the gamut related updates to you all later on this school year after they go through the board policy subcommittee. So those were the 5 ideas off the top of my head that are brand new in the time I've been here in the year and 2 months.
And then I have sort of a more sort of a strange nuts and bolts question. And again, this is one I don't know if it can even be answered. But I read through the idea of setting up command posts, managing the reunification. I will tell you that years and years ago when I worked for Glendale Unified and right following the Whittier earthquake, we had these exact discussions. And reunification was huge. It was a huge issue. And it looks like we've got these very comprehensive plans. I'm curious about how we practice them because when I think about this kind of stuff going on, I think, the old saying, and I'll get parts of it right, that the best plans fall apart in the heat of battle. And what is there anything we can do to help our staff be ready for the planning that they need to do, but understanding that planning may go awry and things may not be what we hope they would be when we set up the plans?
Well, I can almost guarantee you it's not going to be what we thought it's going to be. It's not going to be easy and it won't run perfectly, especially when it comes to reunification, right? So,
right.
We, again, depending on the issue, because this can be a variety of things, right? I mean, if Diablo Canyon, there would be an emergency evacuation for all of our schools at Diablo Canyon, then our teachers keep their kids in their classrooms. But I can guarantee you parents are going to show up at the school. They're going to pick up their kids. So teachers have a checkout. They can check the parent, they're supposed to go to the office and go through the reunification plan, or we'll send their child to them and go through the process like we have outlined in the plan. That's probably not going to happen, right? So parents are going to show up. So we just want to keep track at that point. Teachers want to keep track of students. So these are things that principals talk with their staff about. Hey, here's the type of situation that can happen, right? They go through it. So they review all of the safety plan items with their staff at the beginning of the year. Those students that are still there, then we set up the process. If it's one school where there's an issue or concern, you're going to have a district team that's going to go help facilitate that at the site, right? If there's one school. But again, an emergency like that, where it's every single school site around the school district, then the process is going to have to be kind of at the school site, right? Where they're going to check kids out. They're going to make sure that they have their emergency care cards. They're going to see if this person who's picking up the child is on the emergency care card or not, can pick them up or not. So they keep track basically of every student that leaves their class. And then, eventually we have a bus transportation aspect where we take the students. It really starts at Monarch Grove on the coast, close to school. And then that process will grab kids, take them to Paso Robles, where our staff will be on duty, take care of the students until their parents either show up there or we kind of get next word about what we're going to do. But we set up emergency shelters basically in Paso Robles. I would assume that 90% of our kids are going to get picked up prior to that happening.
We changed it from the event center to where?
It's Paso Robles School District now. Yeah. So we have a new agreement with them. I think just because there's so many people going to the event center that having the school district to basically have our San Luis Obispo schools was a better option.
At the district.
It's actually I think Paso Robles High School. So using the gym there, their facilities. Yeah. Made more sense. So it's a little bit of a change. So again, really any emergency, right, is difficult. I mean, no matter what we do, we practice lockdown drills, we practice fire alarms, but if there's a real fire, it's going to be different, right? So there's a balance in doing those types of drills where you scare people, you go through a drill, right? I mean, those can be kind of traumatic even. So we're a little bit careful on that front in terms of how we do drills. But I think the more and more we actually talk about it, go through the plans, share with teachers and staff, and even students know what to do. They practice these drills. They know where to go. They know what to do in these cases. Hopefully that helps in those emergency situations that we're able to, again, process as best we can and help out. But again, if it's one school site, you're going to see a district team go and really help facilitate that at that particular school site.
Mrs. Hinton.
Yeah, I just know that we've been talking a lot and doing a lot to expand the safety for everybody, to give support for students and support and guidelines for principals and I believe coaches as well. And dealing with how much you can text a student and them, or even be in a room one-on-one with them for safety. Like a doctor always has somebody else in the room with him, right? So what I feel we need to do is get this knowledge out front into the parent education series that we began last year, which we said we were going to take out to the school sites because it was too hidden right here in J2 room. So I believe that, that now our response can be what a big thing we're doing to communicate our safety that we've worked so hard on to make it known to everybody and to do an outreach, a really big outreach in education for the parents and community members.
Okay. I just wanted to add that I think a couple of things that have in my tenure on the board that have changed in terms of going back to Mr. Clausen's question a little bit. When I was first on the board didn't have to go through sexual harassment training. We didn't have to do any of that. Now it's required. So that, and I think it's useful just in terms of our knowing what the rest of our employees are expected to know and to do in situations. I know that several years ago, we hired Resolute to do a comprehensive safety study on all of our schools. And fortunately, we had hired them when we did because about, what was it, Dr. Prater, a month or so later, COVID hit. So we had them already all to ourselves to help us come up with our COVID plan, which is thankfully now moot, but they were able to help us to a great degree to get through that time, and have since we continue to work with them to help us be kind of outside professional eyes looking in on the safety work we do both at our site level and throughout the district. Our board policies, as Ms. Yamashita referenced, do discuss, we have really worked hard to update our athletics policies having to do with coaching and requirements and training for them. And we continue to look at those things, and something that we have the luxury of doing that many of our surrounding districts don't is to actually look at those policies and tailor them to make sure they are addressing the culture and the needs of San Luis Coastal. So those policies go through a series of not just the board policy subcommittee, but as they pertain to particular parts of our district, anything having to do with coaching or athletics are seen and reviewed and commented on by the people who will be carrying them out, who will be carrying out the administrative regulation part of those. So I think that, and then at our elementary sites, we do a lot of work on, last time I visited C.L. Smith, a couple of months, shortly before the school year began, I know they were talking about restorative justice on site, and that's something that many of our, I don't know if all our elementary schools are doing it, but every school has an approach that the students are aware of within discipline, discussing disciplinary actions used at the school site, in the classroom, how they work together, how students can help one another. And those are ongoing developing programs. I'm looking at Ms. Shepherd also. So that the students themselves are really involved in, as demonstrated this evening by the Hawthorne students and their indication of what their expectations are from one another. And their involvement in the process, I think, brings them greater accountability and interest in doing the right thing within their school community. So I don't know if that, I think those are all things we can look to in acknowledging that this is always an ongoing, ever improving process. So the question about what it may have occurred in 2018, yes, we continue to grow and address these issues, and the world is different. I mean, I'm really concerned as we look at our wellness centers and all that we've done, how we will continue, and if and to what extent we will be able to financially continue to support those efforts that are so crucial, I think, to our students. And it's a real concern because we used one-time money to get those things started. One-time money is gone. And we're going to have to work really hard to figure out how to maintain those efforts. And if we can maintain them to the same degree we do now. I feel like I've gotten on a little soapbox. I don't do that very often. I will now step down.
So
Thank you for indulging me.
I'll finish if it's okay, Ms. Sheffer. I would say, going back to Mr. Clausen again, I think, and kind of summarize it, I think the work that we're doing with kids is probably the most important thing that we're doing right now, right? So all the stuff we do with adults, and again, they're doing Title IX training, they're doing student-staff relationship training. Now we're doing all these trainings with adults, but really the best work we can do is the work we do with kids. And so I think the Leader in Me program, like you saw tonight with the Hawthorne kids, I think you listened to your ASB advisor who talked about love being one of the things that they focused on, right? And her words about Morro Bay High, one of their rivals, right? Those types of things. You know, that is the work that the Student Senate. I mean, if you just get an opportunity to go to Student Senate, these are the students these aren't your ASB kid. These aren't your like most popular types that are there that got voted in or whatever. No, these are kids that struggle a lot of times, right? That have difficulties. And so to hear them and to share those things, and then we hear those, Dr. Prater hears them, the rest of the staff hears them, and then we try to implement, when we hear things that are going on or issues or problems going on. But there's nothing better than kids getting up in front of the staff and telling the staff what they need and what they want for their education from their teachers, right? They want an adult that cares about them on their school site. That's what we've heard over and over again from our student senators, right? All levels, elementary, middle, and high school, right? Adults that care. And so hopefully that's the kind of thing that will actually make a difference as we move forward, as we do things, because, bad things will happen, unfortunately, right? And we will do whatever we can to deal with those situations when they happen. The last thing I'll leave is it is super important that people tell us if they see things. If there's a concern or a threat that happens, they have to tell us what happened, why it happened, when it happened, those types of things. We have a hard time following up on things that we can only go so far or have knowledge about, right? So that's probably the most important piece. And I do think that that's hit home. I do think people are hearing that or getting that, because again, I get a ton of the concerns and bully button, responses, those types of things. So, but that's probably the most critical thing when we look at safety. But again, hopefully the community, the board will see we're doing a lot, right? We still have a lot of work to do as we continue to roll this out. And again, the ever-changing society and kind of what we have to deal with, what kids have to deal with, is something that, I don't know that anyone has an answer to right now, right? But we keep working on it.
Mrs. Roger.
Thank you. I think that was really important, your wrap up there, where you said, in essence, you said, see something, say something. That is critical and key to trying to prevent the kinds of occurrences that have happened in the past. Because, the reality is that we can check potential teachers and coaches and custodians and clerical workers. We can do background checks. We can do everything in our power to try to make sure that the people we put around kids are safe for them. But the reality is that at some point, it's possible that someone who is deviant is going to slip through. It just is the world we live in. So it has become extremely important that people are, that students have a trusted adult. Each student has a trusted adult that they can feel comfortable talking to, and that the adults on our campuses are alert and aware and fully trained, which I believe they are now, and willing to speak up. You better, in my opinion, that a staff member should express a concern that is ultimately unfounded and apologize if necessary, than that they should just say, well, I don't know for sure, so I think I better keep that to myself. If we want to protect kids, we have to really stand up for them. And I believe that we are. I think everything we're doing is taking us in the right direction. It's hard to sit here, every board meeting and
it's painful.
Yeah, and feel sort of beat up. We have done and are doing so much, and we are imperfect, and things have happened in our district and in every school district, I think, probably. But we are on the right track, and I'm proud of our efforts. I guess that's my soapbox.
And define what it is. So thank you. Anything else on this? Right. Thank you, Mr. Pinkerton. All right. Next we have, pardon me?
Do we need a stretch break?
Yeah. Do we want a little break? It's 8:08. Can we be back at 8:15, please? AP and A through G results. Mr. Neff, welcome.
All right, thank you very much and allowing me to present this data.
Bien, muchísimas gracias. Permítanme presentar.
There is a lot of data to go over.
Hay mucha información que tenemos que recorrer.
Lo siento. Thank you. So tonight, thank you for allowing me to take some time to run over our AP and A through G completion rate data with you guys this evening. And so with that, I'll go ahead and kind of click through. There are sort of conclusions and next steps built in for each one. So I'll kind of highlight some data points on various slides, but then try to put it together. It's a lot. Just like high schools have a lot of things going on, there's a lot of different data points that high schools look at in terms of trying to kind of define overall achievement, how students are doing, what are we doing well in order to keep doing it, what do we need to change in order to make improvements. And those things change over time too. Every class of students has different needs as well and comes with different skill sets. So looking at that, what are the A through G requirements? So those are the requirements put forth by the UCs and Cal States and usually most private universities. Minimum course requirements or how many courses students need to take in different areas in order to be eligible to apply to go directly into a four-year university. So those are the breakdown. They call it A through G because literally history is A all the way through electives are G. So each letter has a kind of a core component to it. For residents of California, minimum GPA requirements, CSU is a 2.5 cumulative GPA. Typically that is in grades 10 through 12. Some institutions like our local one at Cal Poly include 9th grade scores because it's highly competitive. And for UCs, it's 3.0. Interesting enough, for out-of-state applicants, those requirements are higher. So they're looking to keep in-state students. Those, I would stress, are the minimum requirements. And as we probably likely know, I was in college, it was a while ago. It is much harder. The competitive level is crazy high at any institution these days within our Cal State and UC system. And so for students that just have those minimum requirements, unless they have a really compelling life story, extraordinary circumstance, which the universities have essay requirements that allow students to kind of tell their story in those ways, they're likely not going to get in to most, if any, of the universities with minimum requirements. So they have recommendations as well, and that would be taking 4 years of math, 3 years of science. I would say 4 years of science if you're going to look to be any type of STEM major, as well as 3 to 4 years of a foreign or world language to be competitive. Some universities have come out in the last few years saying they want 5 years of math, 5 years of English. They want even more because the competition is so high. And so it's a challenge for students to get in. It really is. It is a different ballgame than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and even further back when I went to Cal Poly. It's tough, but those are the A through G requirements. You got to take those courses and those amounts to be eligible to actually apply to get in straight to a 4-year. So then looking at how are our students overall. So the data is kind of set up as overall and then jumps into like subgroups. So we kind of see what I call balcony view and then maybe down on the dance floor. So overall, you can see over the since 1920, number of years kind of where we're at in all our graduates meeting A through G requirements. So we do see an uptick from last year at our sites. So both sites making Gain World, they make a 3% increase and Slow High making an 8% increase. So the overall trend of starting, you kind of see goes up and down, starting to go back up again was good. And we are above 1920. So it kind of still sometimes look back at pre-COVID numbers to see what there was back when it was quote unquote normal, right? To see, are we back at that point? What post-pandemic now, what I would call kind of normal 2.0, we're still figuring out, is it a good metric to go back or a good data point to go back and look at pre-pandemic? But we do look at, and we are above that, which is a good sign. It is a good sign. Moving on then to now breaking it into Our subgroups, so socioeconomic disadvantage and non-socioeconomic disadvantaged students. You can see the data there over the course from 1920 to this year. And so looking at, there are gains in both SED and non-SED at both sites, which is good. And so you see actually higher gains made in the SED students. That's great. That's where we want to go. We want students in that group to have higher gains. So we're helping to close the achievement gap. We're at above those 1920 levels as well. And you look at kind of the gaps between SED and non-SED, you see Morro Bay has a little bit of a smaller gap at 19 percentage points, SLO has 26. But overall growth is being made in both groups of students, and higher levels of growth are being made in the SED students subgroup. So that is good news there. Their trajectory is on the right path. Looking at our RFEP, so our redesignated fluent English proficiency and English language learners. And so you can see where we're at with that is still making, SLO made some growth, Morro Bay dipped a little bit, but looking at kind of keeping in mind with both groups, but especially EL, those numbers are really small, right? So when you look at percentages, always be mindful of cohort size or sample size. And so respectively looking, with our EL student data there, aside from San Luis in 2019-20 had 11 students, all the rest of the subgroups for both schools and all the rest of the years for ELs were 10 or less. So if you look at, you had one student make it, then the next year you had 2 students make it. Those are out of 10 students, let's say, or 8 students. Those are pretty big percentage jumps, but actual student differences, it's 1 or 2 students. And so that's where you see kind of this weird sort of pattern going on with the ELs. Your numbers are really small in terms of the number of students in each cohort. With respect to the RFEP, again, not real big student sample sizes or subgroup sizes. So in Morro Bay, they range from 23 to 37 of those years, and San Luis was 45 to 67 students. So again, cumulatively, I've already looked at the total size of the school, total student population, they're pretty small subgroups. But that being said, San Luis is making them grow up with their RFEPs. So there's some good there, and there's some work still to be done. That is an important group we want to work with. It's great that we're redesignating. Now we want to get them more of them making A through G, so they have those post-secondary opportunities with that. So then moving on, looking at students with disabilities. Sorry, making growth, and that's a huge plus. And so looking at, Morro Bay making a 10% jump from last year is a great gain, as well as San Luis High making an 8% growth as well. And so looking at those gains with students with disabilities, that's a good growth in terms of more students meeting A through G. And so we want to keep that trajectory going. You can see Morro Bay has really made some steady growth over the last 4 years. And so that's a positive. San Luis has sort of made some growth flat and then now jumping back up. So doing some good things to help those students make A through G, which again, to me, is all about opening doors or having doors open to post-secondary opportunities for students, right? And so some good data there. Looking now within kind of ethnicity breakdown. And so a lot of graphs here, kind of a lot of data between other white and Hispanic. Other is a breakdown of multiple ethnicities due to either students will mark multiples or their subgroups are so small. If you individually post them, you might actually be able to identify particular students, right? If there's only 3 students in a ethnic subgroup, we usually don't post that data separate, right? We have to be careful about keeping it confidential. So they are grouped together. And so if you see kind of with that between Morro Bay and SLO High, sorry, I almost said AG, bad habit. You look at SLO High's making some growth in some areas, Morro Bay's kind of flat dipped a little bit. But again, if you look at subgroup data size, they are smaller at Morro Bay. Like the other group is under 30 for any of those years, where San Luis was 40 to 57, still fairly small. And so again, smaller subgroup, you'll see more dramatic changes in the percentages bar graphs with fewer students, if that hopefully makes sense. So keep those things in mind, but some work to do there as well. And so as we get into then kind of, so looking at all these bar graphs, what are the things we kind of take away from that? There are positives coming out of that. Schools are doing good work in increasing the percentage of students that are completing A through G. Overall, they went up. SED went up, and students with disabilities went up. Those are all great marks and accomplishments. We want to continue to focus on getting more students completing A through G, because again, if they don't complete A through G, they can't go to a 4-year automatically, period, right? That door is closed. And so we want to have as many students as possible complete those requirements so they have that choice. So we have some work to do in some of our underrepresented groups. And that's something that we continue to work on, the sites continue to work on. So how do you do those things? So it's continuing the use of 4-year and 6-year plans. So start working with students in the middle schools, right? Because some of those courses have prerequisites, right? If you're going to complete Algebra 2 Trig, which is math requirement for A through G, well, it means you got to take Geo. To take Geo, you got to pass algebra. To pass algebra, you got to pass pre-algebra, right? And so you sort of have to do some backwards mappings if you to do that. And so that's part of working in the 6-year plan middle schools as well as 4-year plans. They get in, they have 4-year plans in areas in high schools, right? To map out, counselors are meeting, working with kids. What do you want to do after high school? What are your post-secondary plans, right? And then building, backwards mapping that to, okay, that means you need to do these courses next year. You need to pass them. That moves you on to these courses the following year, right? It sequentially moves through year to year. So continue to work with students on that. We've had additional counseling support at the middle school and high school, specifically with AVID and some other areas. So that helps too in informing students and parents about A through G and what that means. I want to continue to allow for accelerated courses in middle schools as well as summer school. When I reported back on the summer school experience a few board meetings ago, right, I think I emphasized that idea as it provides opportunities for kids, both in credit advancement, they can get ahead, because again, super competitive to get into college, right? As well as they can make up. Freshman year, I took biology, my first semester, struggling in high school, I got a D. I got a B my second semester. Well, you still got to make up that D, right? We don't want to do a whole year of biology, so we can do a semester of it in summer school and get back on track. So that's a key piece too, is getting students back on track that maybe had a blip their freshman or sophomore year to then, okay, they're still back on track. So allowing those opportunities in summer school is huge for them. And then this is sort of new and sort of not. So CaliforniaColleges.edu has been around for quite a while. Counselors are very familiar with it. Most of its use has been career exploration. Students can hop in traditionally in middle school and high school, start figuring out what they want to do and see what those jobs are like. Well, there's been a lot of work at the state level now fairly recently. It's called basically the Cradle to Career Initiative, where the state of California has now said, CDE has now said, we want all students to be basically in, it's called CCGI, that's the initiative, but be in CaliforniaColleges.edu as a one-stop shop to be able to figure out what they want to do and then map out. If you want to be a biomechanical engineer, cool. Here's schools that offer that. Here's what those requirements are to get into those schools. And then it's also linking in with financial aid, application. And so it's really intended to be a one-stop shop or hub for students and parents that they can basically get all their college stuff basically taken care of, which is super cool. And so we have been a partner district on the front end of this for 8 years, I want to say, I think now. So this is not a new thing in using this, but the expansion of CaliforniaColleges.edu to now include interfaces with Cal State Apply, the UC application system, and the California Community College application system, as well as FAFSA, those financial pieces, it means that we all have to get all our systems to then work together. And so we've been doing that, but that is continual work, meaning what's in Aries versus what's in the A through G portal versus what is in CaliforniaColleges.edu. So they all align. So it becomes a one-stop. That kid goes in with their counselor, with their parent, and can get all those, all that information. We report as part of the process to CaliforniaColleges.edu transcript information. So then that stuff is already preloaded for the students. When they log in, they sit with their counselor and they start mapping out what colleges they want to apply to.
Is there anything
that's free?
Is there any alternative for students who don't want to go to college? that provide the same sort of resources for career development?
Yeah, it still addresses that kind of career exploration component. There is that specific work around post-secondary, both at the 4-year and 2-year, but it does have also a more universal, whether it's a trade school or something like that, or trades, I would say, that sort of career exploration. But this part is specifically around that 4-year, 2-year piece. And so that is, I'd say, relatively new. This initiative is in, I want to say, the last year or so that it mandates, I forget the date, it's a few years out, but all students are logged in and have accounts in california.edu to then basically have this one-stop shop. So we are actually on the front end by being a partner district for so long. Myself and some of the site admin from the high schools attended a training at Cal Poly earlier in September. And there was more about their onboarding districts right now. We're actually quite ahead of the curve. But another great resource of this is that we can get reports showing how all our courses aligned. Are they all set up? Are there any errors? So that we can fix real time as we go, as well as we submit and develop new coursework going into the future, as well as we get reports on students and how they're doing and their transcripts and how many are completed. And so it's a huge tool for our counselors that there's sort of been used to, that is now really, the state is really made it much more robust. So it's a pretty cool new resource and opportunity for us, and it's free. So that is a lot of our sort of work right now and Jamie Fazio and our ITSM department does a great job with this, as well as working with our APs at the high school and myself to coordinate getting all these things going. Questions?
Yes, thank you. So just as with safety, I said the parents need to be really on board with this. I feel also for higher education issues, for the sake of equity, is there a breakdown to simplify for parents who may only have a 3rd grade education, say, what the basic A through G requirements are that you described, and then side by side with what are the competitive A through G requirements, so that they can see the difference and help to be on board with supporting their child for going for those. And then, of course, a breakdown for the scholarships, the FAFSA, the sources of scholarships, so that those parents would be able to have kids in college, because they may not be able to afford that.
Right.
As many people are not able to anymore.
Sure.
So can we put together something like that? I know that there's like an explanation for every grade level, exactly what is required as they move through, but then for beyond, could we put some, how to get beyond?
Yeah, and our high schools have things, Morro Bay, I think Thursday night is doing a college information night. They actually tied it to their ELAC committee meeting night, which is cool, which is a cool idea to help kind of bridge that with those families. And so the counselors, they have reps from multiple colleges, both UC, Cal State, private sector as well, to present kind of, because you get into the private colleges, they can have different requirements, right, that vary in state, out of state, that sort of stuff. But they do have information materials they put out that basically give the basic A through G breakdown and those sort of things. But it's something we can always look at. And
that way, see, the student could just take this laminated card that has that side by side and type of thing home. They can put it up on the refrigerator. I mean, the student can say, "Mom, see how it works. I have to do that." Or in reverse, the moms and dads who are here and getting information will have that to talk about and take home to their children. Yeah, simplification of all this very, very big, complex issue would be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm noticing that also that Mr. Clausen and then Mr. Buckman and then Mr. Banfield have their lights on as well. So, Brian.
You can go next.
Okay. I'm gonna say a little bit of what Brian may be gonna say, because I agree with him. This presentation in particular, and you mentioned it yourself, having those numbers of the cohort as well as the percent, for me, would have helped a lot. And so
Can I just answer that? I had asked Mr. Neff about that earlier, And he said it's located on the side.
To the notes part of the slide
Yeah.
deck.
Oh, sorry, I didn't even.
It's okay.
It
It was,
didn't
it's
even- it
more, it
doesn't
was
even-
more for me in case, but it's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. Okay. So, I have several questions, so I'm just going to ask a few and then yield the floor to Mr. Clausen. I noticed the terms college prep and versus high school diploma were used. Can you explain the difference between the two?
College prep refers to if it meets A through G criteria.
And then otherwise,
and
you
a diploma is to
just
is
a diploma.
like get a high school diploma.
And then
Maybe college prep, may not be college prep. Just meets graduation requirements.
I appreciate it. So for a long time, I kind of tried to understand who decides or how does the decision get made for a student, let's say, to be pushed into an AP class or to be pushed to do the A to Gs? Who, besides the parents, I guess, is there one person at the high schools that takes care of that? Is it a
No,
group of
I would say
teachers?
it's like a lot of things. It's multi-factor, right? There are kids that are self-driven and figure that, know that stuff. I would say a lot of our courses, whether they're to get you to a high school diploma, are already college prep. Most of our course offerings are already college prep, regardless of whether it's AP or not, AP or college prep. But, if you're going to say, some people call regular U.S. history, that's actually college prep. So most of our courses, and that work was done over time, right, of making our courses, submitting them and getting them A through G approved. So most courses are actually already college prep. But in terms of specifically to your question, it can be a counselor meeting with kid, it can be teachers that know kids and talk with them, whether they're teaching a college prep course or they're not. And then sometimes you may teach, secondary level, you teach multiple preps, right? And so you may teach some college prep courses, you may not, and you can talk to some students. I did both when I was a teacher, of like, hey, you're doing really good. Have you thought about this? And so, there tends to be, it takes a village, right? There's multiple adults in a kid's life at any grade level, but I would say especially in the secondary and high school where you literally just have more adults on campus that work with that. But in a systems wise, it's going to be administrators, it's going to be counselors, predominantly counselors. They're meeting with students, doing transcript reviews, talking to them about, Mr. Buckman, what do you want to do after high school? Let's start freshman year, if not earlier, right? You want to go into journalism. All right, let's look at what that looks like, right? And so then that becomes the conversations that the counselors keep having with students. Kids' plans change. I told time, I studied bugs in college. I had no plans of being a teacher or going into education. And lo and behold, here I am. So that's okay, right? And so, counselors do a lot of that work as well.
So this is what I'm hearing, and I maybe have it wrong. So maybe it's the counselor, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's be someone else on campus. I'm just wondering if it takes some ability. Is there a plan so that every kid has got somebody and not just somebody? I guess what I'm talking about, is there like a committee assigned to a student? Is there two people assigned to a student that are going to say, well, you're really
The
close.
counselors meet with every single kid on
And
their
that's-
caseload, right? And do it as an ongoing basis. It
Right.
starts in ninth grade, looking at transcripts.
Right.
There's not a lot of transcripts for ninth grader in terms of what they have, but it's more, what do you want to do doing those
But
things,
that's
right?
1,000+ kids with one person.
No. Each counselor has a caseload of students
right.
they
I'm
serve,
sorry,
right?
you're right.
And then
But
you will
one-
have it's a good question. What are the systems in place, right?
Thank you.
So counselors, that is a bulk of their work, right? But then you also have a kind of layered on top of that, you'll have, I think of like AVID teachers do this work a ton, right? They do it specifically with their AVID students. You'll have other teachers that are, I know AP teachers are usually always recruiting. So they're talking to the teachers in their department that teach maybe the prerequisite courses. That's not as maybe systematic, but it's happening. It is happening. And so those are added layers, but counselors do this as like the brunt of their work at the high school level.
Okay. And so then I'll yield the floor in just a second. After this one, Brian. So we now know that having the transcripts go sometimes down in ninth grade, we now have instituted a middle school program. I'm not sure if it's got a name, where we're starting to, the only term I can come up with is track kids. Sorry for using that word. Where kids start taking accelerated classes as early as middle school, and they're sort of like on a path at that point. And my concern is once they're on that path in 8th or 9th grade, that it's going to be even harder to come for this child that's just on the, what is it, the high school diploma path, to get onto the track above. And so I'm looking at 8th and 9th graders are still, developing physically, they're still developing mentally, they're still developing socially. And I don't know how do you cross in the middle school? How do you get out of one group and into the other?
So part of that is you want to have advancement opportunities for kids, right? You got it. So it's about creating additional on-ramps throughout time during that. So it's not, well, you didn't get in 6th grade, so sorry, you can't ever make it for the rest of your TK through 12 career, right? So you allow for more onboarding throughout time so that if the kids change desire or catches up, does whatever happens, then they still have those abilities to get into those advanced classes as they proceed along in middle school and early part of high school. To be honest, you don't see a ton of kids make a huge change their senior year, right? But definitely, I taught freshmen most of my teaching time. Freshmen are very different than by their junior, senior year, right? Kids change. We want them to change. They mature. And so you provide those onboarding opportunities for them to get into advanced classes as they go along.
Okay, so onboarding is, I should know that term. I maybe don't know it.
On ramps, I guess.
That's okay. Onboarding. It's okay. But can you just give me one example of one of those onboarding opportunities?
Yes, this past summer, we had the next gen students all take an advanced math class so that they could all onboard onto an advanced track of math during the summertime.
So, yeah. Okay.
That's one of the ways students can get to the advanced.
That's one
all
way.
students.
That's
one way.
Okay, thanks.
We also are removing prerequisites and barriers and opening up the opportunity to take advanced coursework for as many students who are interested in taking advanced coursework. So our role is not to deny students access to learning opportunities they want, but instead accept them into the advanced pathways and then provide them support while they're there.
And I hear that it's that students wanting to. And so what about the kids that are all the academic ability, but they're just going to float through?
So the work we're doing, Ms. Yamasha explained it beautifully. I just want to add one more layer to it. What we haven't done before, which we're doing now, is we're being intentional about encouraging kids to get on that on-ramp in middle school, and in some cases, even upper elementary, really challenging them, which is why when the board decided to support the summer experience program, we're trying to make summer an opportunity as early as possible so that kids see it as not something that they're in trouble for or they messed up or it's dreadful, but rather it's a chance for them to reimagine themselves, to re-engage in the community that they may not have identified themselves before as being capable of doing. So whether it's next gen, whether it's our AVID kids, whether it's students that we look at who might have disabilities or might be from underrepresented families and populations, that we are saying, no, we believe in you. Let's give this a try. And then we're going to give you support in order to find that success. And, to see kids' lights go on, to see their shoulders broaden because they're in a class that they never saw themselves in is really important, especially as we start talking about closing the gap and really closing not just the gap, but really it's the opportunities. That's the key. And so I know there's a lot of discussion, even at the state level, that I completely disagree with. I mean, vehemently disagree. This notion that equity means dumbing down. I look at it completely differently. You got to flip that narrative. Equity, in many ways, is opening the doors to opportunity and pushing up and getting kids into opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have. And we can get into the whole conversation about bias and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is, the younger we can get kids believing in themselves and knowing that we believe in them to do hard things and to do it well, to work hard, to find success they didn't ever imagine. That's the key. That is the key. And so that's why I think this is an important question.
So I'm hearing what you're saying, and Avid and Next Gen, at some point, maybe next year, it would be interesting to have one of these charts that shows us what Avid kids do and Next Gen kids do in comparison to other groups. It might be really interesting. So I'm going to yield to Brian, but I have some other questions.
So it's going to be Mr. Clausen and then Mr. Banfield. We can go back. We can go back to you.
Thanks. So I just want to dig into a little more what it means to meet the A to G requirements and not meet them. I mean, so if we take Morro Bay as an example, this year they had 57% of their students meet the requirements and 43 not. What does it look like to graduate without meeting? It looks like the A to G requirements are fairly core set of classes and you have to get C's in them. So we're saying that 43% of our students are not getting C's in the core classes, but they're still graduating. And so does that mean?
No, not necessarily, because it can be, if you get a D or an F, automatically doesn't count in any A through G required course, right? That's one thing. It can also be you have to finish, so you have to finish through Algebra 2 Trig. You have to do 2 years of a world language. You have to do 2 years
They're
of a
just
science.
choosing not to take.
So sometimes, they may not be completing their world language. They may not be completing their science, 1 year of life, 1 year of physical science. It could be some of those pieces too with it.
But can they choose not to do that? I mean, as a parent, I guess I was under the impression, I mean, my kids came home and they're like, I have to take visual performing art to graduate. I had that as an example. And it was positioned to them as to graduate, not to meet the A to G requirements.
So it can depend in terms of the high school requirement has elective requirements, right? There's like a VPA component to that, but then those things, like there's not a world language requirement for a high school diploma.
So in this data, there's just a swath of kids that are just choosing not to take the classes, and regardless of their performance in classes, they're not going to meet the requirements by choice. Is that what you're saying?
Some of them, it could be correct.
What you're also going to see in a future meeting, Mr. Neff will be reporting on CTE completion rates.
Okay.
And you'll see a flip-flop of the data between Morro Bay High and Slow High. So they're CTE focused pathways, so they won't take foreign language because I'm going to Cuesta. And so I want to take 3 years of welding class or FFA or whatever it is, right? And so they don't meet the UCCSU A to G, but they clearly graduate from high, no problem
this is
there.
a success metric, or maybe that's not what it is. I mean, it's indicative of what portion of our students are choosing to engage on this pathway, but there may be students very intentionally not engaging on this pathway and having.
Yes.
So that would be the breakdown.
That are just fine. Right?
That would be a task that I would say for Mr. Neff to dig into as he moves into this position. Why are students not getting A to G, right? Oftentimes for us in my previous high school it was English. Like they were getting 1 D in an English class at some point of the 4 years. So you're done, right?
Yeah.
Algebra 2 was probably the most difficult thing in terms of math, meeting that math requirement before they were seniors. So those are the two kind of probably the biggest one.
Well, yeah,
and then they'll take ag science instead of chem.
Well, yeah, as I was trying to interpret this, I was assuming there's a subset of students who attempt to take this load and don't get all C's. And then there's a subset that just don't choose to even engage on the path.
Yeah.
And those seem like two totally different scenarios. And students that choose not to, I mean, to the degree that this is a metric of how many met and didn't meet it, choosing not to meet it is a outcome by choice, right?
And honestly, probably not a good choice for kids. And why? Because even if you're going to go to a JC, you're going to go to Cuesta or Hancock or one of those schools, you still have to pass the basic requirements to get an AA degree. You're going to have to pass Algebra 2 at Cuesta. So by not getting this A to G, by not being prepared, what I would say is that you're going to see most of those kids that aren't A to G will not complete Cuesta or Hancock. they won't make it. At one point when I was principal at AG High, we had like 70% of the kids that went to Cuesta didn't finish.
You know, I get that. I guess I'm just saying if there's a subset of students that choose not,
See who those kids are.
well, yeah, like if I chose not to,
And why?
to meet the AGG requirements, I'm just not going to meet them, right? And no matter what we do, the student is choosing not to, right?
Dr. Prater.
Yeah, I just want to add one little piece to this. So there are multiple things occurring here. There's our graduation requirements. There's the A through G. They're different.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there's the CTE pathway completion. Okay. What I think personally, these A through G numbers aren't good enough because the board has anchored itself, as they should, to produce student outcomes that are both college and career ready. In other words, you can still go to Cuesta by not being A through G. And a number of our kids deliberately choose that early on for the reasons that you heard. I think we can do a much better job of following up with students and their families early on to say, here's why we believe you need to leave our high school with as many tools in your toolkit as possible, college and career ready. Okay. Now, as Ryan said earlier, it's flip-flop when we talk about CTE pathway completers, because Morro Bay has super high pathway completer rates and SLO High doesn't. So the numbers that we're seeing at SLO High to be a pathway completer are a bit problematic. And I look at it in the same way as A through G at Morro Bay High. They're problematic. And how do we address it? Well, at SLO High, part of the problem is it's a super competitive academic environment. These are kids, as Mr. Neff said, these are kids typically at SLO High that has a very strong AP culture. So you have kids deliberately taking additional AP classes instead of a CTE pathway because the trimester system allows for that. And that, I guess, is okay if those kids that take those AP classes are intentional about it. They're the ones that say, well, I don't need the CTE pathway because it doesn't work in my schedule. But what I will say is both high schools have been very conscientious about developing dual enrollment, which will help our kids tremendously reach that A through G. Trying to look at the master schedule program and communicate to parents and kids why they need to leave our high schools career and college ready, I think is in their best interests. There are some exceptions, but by and large, that should be our objective. So that is if I could get, there's also an industry out there, cottage industry, where young kids and families hire college preparation companies that help them fill out their applications and help them prepare to get into Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley, UCLA, the bigs, University of Pennsylvania, all those great schools, which are super competitive and they know the recipe, right? So for most kids, encouraging college and career readiness is very likely in their best interest, especially when we look at developing the whole child to ensure that they're best prepared for the world in front of them. Those are my thoughts. And you should begin to see in the next 3 years some shifting in these numbers.
There's a cultural piece that I know at least that both principals, like this isn't new to them. I've been talking with them since we, sort of started getting this data. And AP, you'll see as I get into it here in a little bit, of, having, especially Principal Morley pushing that culture change of A through G, regardless if you're going to Cuesta or not, right? Because as Ms. Spring has stated, you're going to have to do that coursework at some point. And the number two issue, the two biggest issues all community colleges have across the state are remediation, students coming in and having to take below level coursework, just basically repeat so they drop out, or not finishing something because they don't have a plan, right? And so that's part of having that A through G means they won't be doing remediation, and they're much more likely to have a plan of, yes, I'm going to Cuesta, it's great, it's free, and then I'm going to transfer to whatever, or I'm going to Cuesta, I'm gonna do this certificate program. Like having that plan is huge. And so that's a cultural piece too, that those principals are aware of and working on, and that takes time. And I think I'm gonna allude to it when we get to the AP data, some of that shift is happening in the AP. So you're going to see it happening in A through G as time goes along here too.
Okay, we've got Mr. Banfield, Mr. Buckman, and Mrs. Hinton.
Well, I think I'm going to have a discussion outside of the board meeting because I'm just not getting something. Can you show slide 3 again? No, that's
that one.
No, yeah, that's the one.
Oh, yeah.
So is it the proximity to a university that's making the difference between the two campuses? There is something that I'm not able to understand. Both schools are part of our district. Why is one school on a trimester and another on a semester? That's one question. We don't have to answer that right now, but I want us to think about that. And what is there about, why is there a disparity in outcomes here that I'm looking at from this graph? We don't have to answer that right now because we don't have time for that. But I really would like to meet with somebody sometime to explain that.
I'd like to be at that meeting.
Now, can we go back to slide number 2?
Yes.
That one?
Yep. Now I'm gonna get on my soapbox for just a teeny second here. World language. World language. How many years? 2. The times I've been over in Europe, I'm not a world traveler, but the times I've been over in Europe and I talk to people on the street and young people, and they talk to me in such fluent English. I say, well, how long have you been studying? Oh, we've been studying since we were.
Yep.
Knee high to a grasshopper.
Uh-huh. We are such a xenophobic society. We really are. It is not good. But I don't want to take anybody's time. And I thank you for your presentation.
I still have another half of it.
Okay, yeah, we have a long way to go. This is Mr. Buckman.
Mr. Neff, as long as we're on slide 2, can you open up the stuff at the bottom? Because that's what I did. And it supports Mr. Banfield.
That one?
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be big enough. If we look at B, right?
English?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at 4 years, 8 semesters of college preparatory English composition literature, including no more than 1 year of advanced Spanish. And then we look down underneath that, advanced ESL. Say it again, please.
Not the same. ESL is not the same.
Okay. Advanced ESL, maybe say it again.
ESL is English as a second language or ELD.
Right.
So those students oftentimes can get one year of their ESL ELD class to count towards the 4.
Right. They can use one
of the year.
Okay. All right. Maybe
To count towards the 4.
All right. Thank you. I'm misreading this
But
wrong
it's
then.
limited to just one ELD year.
All right. I thought they were not allowed to use it. Okay. So then the same is probably true for advanced ESL, maybe substituted. Okay. So the second part of that, ESL, ELD, cannot meet the senior year of English. Okay. So let's go down to, hold on just a second.
That's for the UC. So one column is UC's, right? One column is Cal State.
So if we go down to E, right? English language other than English, 2 years, 4 semesters or equivalent of a language other than English. So you have to have a second language that's other than English, but Spanish doesn't count. Spanish
does
counts.
count.
All right. So I was reading that wrong.
So ESL is for like
got it.
English language learners. So they're saying that can be the advanced ESL course for a student that is an EL student can count for English of the 4 years.
Totally.
But this is like Spanish courses you would take to learn Spanish or American Sign Language or French or I don't know anybody offering German anymore.
Latin.
Okay. Sorry, I misread this. I appreciate your correcting me. I'll yield the floor before I embarrass myself anymore.
Going back to what you were saying, Dr. Prater, let me see if I understood it correctly. You were saying that we'll see more of this in the coming years. Did you mean an expansion of CTE or an expansion of A through G? I wasn't sure which you meant, and then I have something else to ask.
Both.
Okay. It is really hard to assume that the A through G it would be a superior choice for just about any student. I know in my college background, I guess it would have, in my family background, it would have been, but I don't hold to that anymore because I've seen and learned too much about students from my own teaching career, especially bilingually and especially of the SEDs and ELDs. So I wanted to point out a case example. I know a young man who is a sophomore now in another district and a high school, and he's in all the AP classes and very bright, very wise, mature, and grounded. And what he chooses for his, so far, the way he sees his life going is he wants to be a welder. So there's nothing you're going to be able to do, because I did try a little bit to convince him. So he might change his mind later, but his parents are fine with it too. And that's why I say, the parents and the children all need to be on board. We don't just deal with a child as though they're not part of their family, okay? The families have to all be on board because that's their best support system. But they're just families that it's okay. They don't want their child to stress, and they want their child to be happy, and their child is happy doing exactly what they want to do right now. So you're not going to get a leopard to change its spots, in other words, that easily.
Yes, and I happen to have my third son who's determined to be a welder. And we've had similar dinner table conversations about this very thing. Why do I need to take advanced math? Why do I need to do the things you're making me do? I'm familiar with what you're saying. And my message to that, or my belief, I should say my personal belief as superintendent and as a parent, is that this child that you're speaking of very well may become a welder and very successful, and good for him. And I, of course, champion that. But there are also many examples where kids think they want to be something when they're 15, 16 years old, 17 years old, and they make decisions at that point that, and now they're 19. Circumstances change, they're 20, and now they're back at a community college because they didn't take their A through G, and they're having to take classes that they haven't really been exposed to in a long time, and they struggle, and the dropout rate in community colleges are very high for kids that are trying to get into a 4-year. And so, because they change their mind and they want to be an engineer or they want to be a teacher, and now all of a sudden it's a very steep hill. My message is, do it now, do both. Get your CTE pathway and complete your A through G. And I know it's difficult, but we're trying to create as many on-ramps as possible. Because if indeed this child decides to be a welder and is a great welder, then they've completed their A through Gs. They're better for it in many ways, and they have opportunities in front of them, maybe for management, maybe for things they didn't think of. And so for me, it's a win-win. For me, it gives kids tools to be most flexible in the workforce and in the world outside of post high school. And that's why I'm a strong believer in A through G and CTE pathway completion. I think we need to push our kids to do both. And I really believe that, even for my own kid.
Yeah. I'll work on it.
Mr. Banfield, your lights on again?
Real quick, Japanese blue collar workers are proficient in algebra.
That may very well be true. In America, if you're not able to show that you passed algebra and you need that degree to get the next job or the next promotion, now you're back at square one at a community college taking Algebra 1. And I say, let's do it while they're young and in high school so they don't have to face that.
I was just going to add that in order to be considered for the apprenticeship program with the Brotherhood of Electrical, the Brotherhood, IBEW, you got to pass algebra. You got to take a math test. You got to pass algebra.
That's high school graduation requirement.
I mean, just
Mr. Buckman?
sorry, almost. No. I have. So when we look at one of the conclusions and then the next steps, continue to use a 4 to 6 year plan and parent education opportunities. I've come to notice. So we'll go to school site council meeting or PTA meeting, and just 10, maybe 15 parents. Went to the DLAC meeting. Chris asked me about this, which brings it to my mind. There had to be, Stephanie, what, 50, 60 people in the room? And then I looked around, what was the other difference? And was the amount of childcare that was provided. There were 2 credentialed teachers. Okay. And they had a great time. And then I looked for the third thing, and there was a full meal. It was amazing. And desserts outweighed the main courses, and I don't know if that's the trick or not, but the room was full, and the presenter was, I keep saying the presenter was awesome, but just trying to figure out how we can boost this parent education part. Thanks.
Good. Something definitely for us to work on. For sure. No, seriously, I mean, getting parental involvement in high school is hard, right? It's not impossible, but it's challenging. We've got to work a little differently, I think, or try some different things. That's a good point. Good question. All right, we're ready to move on to AP data? Okay, here we go. So advanced placement, that's another, again, these are all metrics to look at, student success in high school. I would very much caution about picking one metric and making it a silver bullet, right? I mean, it's a blessing and curse of high school. There's many things going on all the time, right? And so we look at A through G, we look at CAS, we can look at AP. There's multiple types of data. So AP is one to look at. So then what is an AP course? So it basically stands for advanced placement. They're run by the College Board. They are entry-level college courses that can be substituted in a bachelor's program. So some of them are their bachelor's level coursework. Typically you'd think of kind of your freshman, maybe your 100s, depends on the institution, but like your freshman level courses is usually what they sort of kind of correlate to. So AP has an AP exam. APs are nationally normed courses, so they're offered throughout, like they're offered actually internationally, but across the country. So students taking a calculus AB test in New York is going to take the same test that they take in California, right? Students can take that test. Depending on their score, it's a 5-point scale. Typically for most universities, 3 or higher gives you passing credit, but that varies. It varies on the institution. It can vary on the major that the student is applying to, the department. It's not a universal thing, but sort of standard-ish is 3 or higher will get you credit. And so it allows them to get college credit while still in high school. So they're AP courses, and it's been around for a while. In terms of aligning with our strategic direction as a district and where one of our goals for high schools to be ranked in the U.S. News and Report, both of ours are ranked this year. And so one of the things that that report looks at amongst high schools is looking at AP and that college readiness piece. And so it's 30% of the overall score. And so there's two parts that are factored in. So one is just an overall participation rate. How many students do you have at taking AP courses, right? And then taking the AP test, and they look at the number of 12th grade students, right? And then they'll look at, well, then how many took it and passed the test? It's good, right? You can have a whole bunch of kids take it, but if they don't pass, then that's not it's not an indication of success, right? So they're giving a much higher weight to those taking and passing. And so that is part of what our high schools are working on and do, and both of them are ranked. Coming in this year, comes out in, I want to say July, I think is when they post it, somewhere in there, each year for schools. So then looking at what courses do our sites offer. So there are the courses. Morro Bay offers 14 this year. SLO offers 19. A lot of them are pretty traditional ones that are offered each year. Sometimes there's some new ones. I think, which one was it? 2D Art is a new one for Morro Bay this year, I want to say. And so we look to expand when there's student interest with staffing, ability to staff it and teach it. Then looking at breakdown kind of enrollment history, you can see between Morro Bay. So you can see a big growth like in English language. AP English language went from 77 last year to 90 enrolled this year. So enrollments may fluctuate. Sometimes that's dependent on some courses may flip-flop. Sometimes you'll do AP chemistry one year and then AP biology the next year, and you flip-flop because you don't get enough enrollments to run both at the same time. That was pretty common at a previous school I was at. Sometimes they'll just fluctuate based on student interest and what's going on. But they've made some growth, and like AP language was a pretty big growth. Looking at courses at SLO High, so you can see what they've offered over the year. You see some growth in art history has jumped up. You see chemistry, which is, as a science person, I think pretty cool. That is a really hard test. You may be biased in science, but AP Chem is a really hard course, really hard test. So see big enrollment jump is pretty cool. I'm a science fan. So hopefully those are more people going into science and STEM backgrounds or careers. See a jump in macro econ, going from 56 to 103 is a pretty big jump. So some good jumps there in enrollments. So then looking at kind of how did our kids do on these AP tests. So you see kind of over the last 4 years, the total number of AP students at Morro Bay continues to increase, and those that have scores of 3 or higher. Again, 3 is kind of that benchmark for passing. So you see a pretty big increase over there. Also, the number of exams being taken. So we want kids enrolled, we want kids taking the classes, we want kids taking the test, and we want kids passing overall, right? And so those are the things we look at with an overall pass rate of 77%. We look at the number of students with scores 3 or higher, the number of exams being taken, and the total number of AP students are all making gains, which is a credit to the staff there and changing what I said kind of earlier, changing that culture to be taking on AP courses where maybe traditionally students would have been encouraged or weren't going to do it or wouldn't think they're smart enough to do it. So good stuff there. And then moving on, close that. For SLO High, you see a similar trend with more students taking the AP courses, more exams being taken, and then more students with 3+ scores. They are at a very high pass rate. And so maintaining it is a lot of work, let alone trying to increase. But they did increase, went from 88 to 92. So kudos to them. That's a very high percentage of students with 3+ passing scores. So they're definitely doing work and growing and keeping a high bar there at SLO High. And so looking at, this is just one thing to look at how many are getting fee waivers. And so kind of an interesting trend. You see some growth and a little dip, and then you sort of see a flatlining. I've heard anecdotally, though, that more of our students are not getting fee waivers because it's harder to get. I think that's maybe related to applying for fee waivers. It's expensive to live this area, and so overall they may be making more to not actually qualify, even though like cost of living wise, they're still not considered. We wouldn't think of them as being well off or doing well. But that's something for us to look into. Are we actually not reaching kids on that, or they just not as many are getting granted waivers? And so the waivers are granted by the College Board, is my understanding. So it's something for us to look into.
I thought the foundation was helping with any student who couldn't pay the fee the foundation was paying. Am I
They
incorrect?
do. This would also just where they granted a waiver or not. So not did the
Oh,
foundation,
okay.
but this is from the College Board. So we can see
All
how
right.
many were granted waivers. So this isn't kids not getting to take the test.
Okay.
One of the pieces of data we get is how many kids got received waivers from the College Board.
Okay, so just to be clear, any student who is financially unable to pay the fee, we pay that fee.
Foundation supports.
Okay, great. Thank you. I
Do
just
we have
wanted
data
to
on how
clarify that.
much that was? Or I mean,
Yeah, I'm sure the foundation has, I would think. But
Yeah, it was several thousand. I think I saw the data.
Today, Christine shared with us in our meeting the Next Gen Scholars. It was about 15 for Next Gen and Avid students, about $15,000 last year.
Okay.
For all the college applications and tests and stuff.
so that's college applications and AP exams,
Correct.
and so it's all, okay, thank you.
Can I ask a clarification on that very point question? I'm just asking if the fee is waived, then nobody needs to pay for it, do they? So how does that work?
Correct. Yeah. So that was the College Board saying that a child has an economic need, and so their fee is waived, and no one pays for the student to take the test. The child tests for free, and then for students who are in our Avid classes and or Next Gen Scholars, but our Next Gen Scholars are still young. They're freshmen right now, so they haven't done it. But for Avid Scholars at our high schools, we support college applications and AP tests through our foundation.
yeah. So, I mean, I think this was similar to there's a similar tone in last year's presentation on this topic, which I know this is your first time giving it, but I guess I'm going to ask the same. So this concept that we're encouraging everyone possible to take AP tests, it always just kind of gets me totally up in my hackles for a few reasons. One, they're $100 a test. And secondly, I mean, I've got 3 kids in college now that took a lot of these at SLO High, and the vast majority of them are not applicable to college units when they get there. And so I believe in the AP programs. I believe in them as classes. I believe pushing our kids to take the tests is wasting thousands of dollars of our family's money. I mean, one year I think I had a $900 AP test bill. And I would be shocked if more than 1 or 2 of those tests was actually applied to college credit. So maybe just it's my personal experience, but the culture of everyone should take as many AP tests as possible, I just don't agree with. And I mean, specifically last year, my daughter graduated and she didn't take any AP tests, but she's going to be fine in college. She took AP courses, but she didn't take AP tests. So I think we should be really careful with this message that we're encouraging every kid to take an AP test because they're cost prohibitive. It puts pressure on families in a way where, like, my friends are all taking the tests. The school says I have to take all these tests. That you don't actually. I actually believe that a dual enrollment course where you get the college units at Quest is a much more cost-effective and powerful path for us to pursue. And I think saying that they should take every test, it's really frustrating that U.S. News and World Report is basing their ranking off of that. I think that's highly irresponsible of them. And it's not the right thing for our families. But as someone who's had AP students, I find this crazy that this is the thought process. And I don't know. Every time it's presented that we're telling kids to take every AP test possible, it just makes me really upset at the College Board. Really upset how much money they make. I'm upset how much they charge. I'm upset about personal experience I had with them. Like, sorry, I'm on my soapbox. I finally did. But I just don't think we should tell everyone to buy every AP test because there's plenty that will not apply to college credits later. And secondly, I mean, getting more financial support, if that's the environment, is just so required. And I don't know. I said enough. I don't know. My question is, do we really encourage everyone to take every AP test? Because I could give you a half dozen examples where a kid shouldn't take an AP test probably.
I would say if a kid is in an AP course, we would overall, yes, we want them to take the test so they have that potential of getting college credit. I think there's factors around affordability and how that works. Again, I approach it. I was an AP student. Some of my things transferred to Poly, some didn't. I had a son who did an AP, didn't take the test, but did a CTE pathway. Like, I've lived it as a parent too, to some degree. To me, it's about having opportunities for kids. And I would caution around having one size fits all in a sense. I know that's not what you mean, but I think our role is to provide opportunities to kids.
No, but your statement was we're working hard to encourage every kid to take every AP test possible as part of the presentation. And I just don't think that's the right message.
Okay, this is now reminding me of my response to you last year. Yeah. So I'm going to say it back to you, out of all respect, of course.
I'll record it for next year.
Yeah. This is how we're being assessed through the U.S. News and World Report for one of the top high schools in the country. That's a metric they use. We've been using it as a metric internally to gauge whether our kids are not just taking AP classes, but are they learning? And that's how we gauge it. And now at SLO High, you have 2 trimesters of classwork and 1 trimester of seminar. That seminar at SLO High is dedicated entirely to the test. At Morro Bay High, it's a semester system, and those kids are at a decided disadvantage because they're still covering the coursework and getting ready for the assessment. So there's an inequity there. I won't talk tonight about the scheduling issue. But the third part for me as a parent that I've personally lived and witnessed and benefited from is my oldest boy, Mr. AP kid, started Cal Poly as a sophomore because of the classes he took at SLO High that Cal Poly took in as credit. So, and he wasn't alone. There were a lot of kids at Poly so in effect, his college he finished in 3 years, just a little over 3 years, because of the AP credits that he was given for college credit at Cal Poly. For passing the exam. And so I share that with you because that's a considerable savings when you look at the amount of money it would have cost had he gone 4 years. Now, he might be an aberration, but I don't believe so. I think there are some private schools that accept that and some that don't. There are UCs that accept it and some that don't. But in my personal case, I can tell you it shaved an entire year off my college expenditures at Cal Poly. So I just want us to think about that as a reality.
Yeah, no, and I'll reiterate probably a point I made last year.
Okay.
The stress and pressure around these tests is ridiculous. And from an emotional wellness and a mental health standpoint, doing 8 of these tests in a 2-week period is not a healthy thing for any kid. And we have kids taking that many AP tests.
Yeah. But I think we came up as a conversation last year to encourage kids not to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if we're saying AP classes are great, in many classes, taking an AP test is a smart thing to do.
Yes.
In many cases, not taking the AP test is a perfectly fine thing to do.
Yeah.
That is a opposite of
message.
What this presentation says. This presentation says our goal is that everyone that takes an AP test is going to take the test. Class is going to take the test.
Because this board, Brian, said to me, they're looking at all those metrics. And the U.S. News and World Report is on our strategic plan to gauge our success of our high schools on this. It's in our 5-year plan to measure our ratings in the U.S. News and World Report. It's in the 5-year strategic plan. Now, we can pull that off, and I'm certainly I'm open to that if that's what you want to say. But there's two things I'm hearing. One, that it's a financial expense that's unreasonable to families, regardless of income. And secondly, the emotional wellness issue, which is a stressor on kids in the spring. Because it's not just the AP test in the spring, it's also our CASP testing. It's also the application process for colleges. There's a whole lot in the spring in 11th grade that just buries our kids. So that's certainly something worth looking at. And I personally don't think if a kid takes an AP class and doesn't take the exam, I've seen the opposite. I've seen when we didn't make this a priority and kids were taking the class but not the test, and they were doing it to boost their GPA, but not to learn. For me, it felt wrong, just academically with integrity. It felt wrong to take a course like that, sit through a seminar for a third trimester and not take the exam. Just felt kind of yucky to me, but those are my thoughts. And I'm certainly open for that conversation. There's probably a middle ground is my point, but maybe we could have this conversation again next year, but I'm willing to look
look
at
forward
this.
to it.
Okay.
I've got Mr. Unger, then Mrs. Hinton.
So, Dan, I asked you some questions. I sent you some emails and you answered my questions, and I'm going to bring this question forward since we're having this discussion right now. What's it all about? You know, how are we determining what is a quality high school education for our students? Is it the number of, the quality metric, the number of AP classes our students are taking? Is it the number of A to G classes our students are completing? Is it the CTE pathways that our students complete? Is it our high school graduation and four-year college acceptance rates? Is it college acceptance rates to first-tier universities? Is it kids that go to say Morro Bay High School, go to Cuesta for 2 years and then transfer, which is going to be hard data to get. But how do we put it all together to say to ourselves, we are giving our kids a quality value education that's going to help them in the rest of their lives be the people that they want to be and should be? So how do we take this
That's a
and
million
do
dollar
that?
question, right? I think that's part of a further dialogue that we should have as a district. Again, philosophically, I've been a high school at a long time, different capacities. It's about opportunities for kids. I'm thinking to the equity work and the relevance of street data, right? It's easy to take these sort of 30,000 foot view marks and then say it's this and generalize, right? Which we have to do to some degree. But again, every data point has a story, right? And so my own two kids, I had one that was A through G, did CTE, did a Cuesta program, and has a job right now will probably make close to 6 figures, right? And may not I would love for him to get his AA or AS. I've had those conversations with him, right? My other student didn't make A through G because some things happened during their high school career, but is doing Cuesta and is going to go to a 4-year, right? So every student is different. Now you have to have generalizations. You have to have data to look at, but my point is you have to look at multiple measures. You have to look at broad views and discrete views, right? And I think I mentioned, the ability of we're going to have Parsec. That will be this new data management system that'll allow us to work with data in ways that aren't like what you're seeing, that are terribly clunky, to be honest. We're pulling data from individual silos and trying to make it fit and tell a story, especially at the high school level with all these different types of metrics, is really cumbersome, right? And so I'm not here to say Parsec is going to be a silver bullet, but it's definitely going to be a game changer for us and how we're going to pull data and be able to look at a large view or like a 30,000 foot view, but then also get down to courses, students, much more granular detail to see, well, is what we're looking at from up high match with what we're seeing sort of at that street data level of those individual students or courses what are those stories, right? To be able to then find that overall multiple measures to say, yes, we're being successful. That's objective, or that's a subjective term. We have to define what success means, right? And that, I will say philosophically, I'm new here, so maybe, you know, feel free to step in. To me, it's about opportunities for kids. Not every kid is the same, and kids do change. I studied bugs in college. I had no intention of going into education, not one bit, even though my dad talked to me about being a teacher when I was a senior in high school. I was one 10 years later at the same school he taught at, but I had no clue then going, you know, in high school and college. And so those things happen at all different levels with all different kids, right? And so having those opportunities, having those doors open for them allows them to then have whatever maybe is originally door A, or now it's door C that they go through. So coming back to, it's multiple measures we have to look at, especially at the high school level, of what is success, and looking at these things plus probably more, and be able to have a better way to manage the data will help.
Well, and I think some of these things too, these are the things that we're hearing that employers want. Some of those skills that I don't know that we can test. Can we test collaboration? You know, can we test your ability to fail and come back, and with new ideas, you know, to make failure a positive learning experience? How do we take this data? And I know you will be thinking about this. How do we take this data and say, yeah, maybe U.S. World News Report is great, but we saw in today's Tribune a high school ranking from, I don't know, I forget what it says. You know, it said New Tech High, your former high school, #1, San Luis High, #2, Morro Bay, #5. What does this mean? And what does it mean to the community? What does all this mean to people? And how can we learn from it and change our high schools to be better places for students to have those opportunities you're talking about?
It's a balance. We want to say one measure is this, right? We want it to be easy to judge, but you can't. Like you can't. You have to be. It's more detailed than one thing, right? And that's hard. And so we have to do work around spelling out and defining and communicating clearly to our parents and kids what does that look like, right? And is it reflective of what industry is wanting, right? Industry moves faster than education does. And so how are we trying to then catch up? And industry changes. So our work with Foundation, our meetings, we work with Ms. Robertson and Abbott and CTE, and looking at, you know, how are we doing to support our students with, can they get a job here and afford to live here, right? It's expensive to live here. So are we, you know, matching educational experiences with post-secondary work opportunities, right? Easy to talk about, systematically challenging to do. Those are all things we have, you know, that's some of our work to do, bulk of our work to do. Hopefully I answered that question, but it's a very relevant question with many
I wasn't expecting an easy answer to this, but more of a dialogue and some thoughts for us as we move forward.
Okay. Anyone else? You had.
I still have one more slide.
But still have one more slide.
I'll go with one. All right. So put it all together. So definitely some celebrations. I know philosophically there may be some disagreement, but looking at increased number of exams. So Morro Bay, you know, is having more students be enrolled in AP courses, taking AP courses, passing AP tests. And you look at, you know, especially over the last 2 years, you see some significant growth there. And then you look at, you know, courses that pass with a 90% pass rate, which is high, which is great. Looking at, you know, Gov, U.S. history, stats with one on there. For SLO High, you know, even though they have a lot, they're still continuing to increase, especially over the last couple of years. And so when you're already high, increasing is really hard. So they are doing tough work there, and kudos to them. They have a very high overall passage rate, and they have a number of courses that have a 90% pass rate, which is great because, again, the courses are hard. Students put a lot of work in it, and they cost money. We want them to pass them. So that's great that they have those things. So continue next steps. It goes back to kind of what the A through G, what Ms. Hinton talked about, of that education piece, right? what do these things look like? If you want to do this post-secondary, how do you backwards map that? Are you aware of these opportunities? What does it take to do those things? Having those on-ramping options available, summer school, middle school. Remember back to summer school presentation, a huge chunk of summer school credit was original credit. Those are on-ramps for those kids to be able to get ahead, which is great. So continuing to do that, and then looking at, trying to increase certain numbers of maybe underrepresented groups in AP classes. And then, do we need some other courses to help students get additional coursework so they can be competitive? Going back to the beginning, it's really hard to get into college. So just meaning that minimum A through G is likely not going to do it. Having additional AP courses is one way to make you more competitive, as well as getting college credit, which hopefully reduces your tuition costs over the course of your bachelor's degree. And so having other opportunities, advanced world language options for students helps with some of those things. So looking at course offerings, but I think as mentioned earlier before, looking at I think Dr. Prater talked about master scheduling challenge in high school, right? Want to have a ton of options is great, but you only have so many periods in the day and so many kids. And so looking and working with sites on master scheduling of, not trying to have conflicts where a student, I really want to take, this will be a made up example, but I want to take Calc AB, but it's also another course I want to take is at the same period and they're only offered those periods. Now I can only choose one, right? So trying to be mindful of what we call singletons in the master schedule, but making so kids have options. Again, it's about kids having options. And so, working with sites, that's always a yearly process. High school master schedule is a beast. And so working with them on trying to eliminate those sort of challenges so kids can have more options. That concludes my slide deck.
Is there
Still standing?
is there anyone from the public who wishes to address us on this? Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate the terminology of on-ramps. I think that as a board, we've worked really hard to have CTE and college ready, that as opposed to there was a time when it was an or, and we are an and all our new courses for any CTE courses, they must be A through G compatible. And I think that really has helped with the on-ramps. So we're working hard at this.
And I'll be bringing CT data at a future board meeting.
Okay,
So
thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, we're moving. Good one. Yeah. So moving on to our action consent agenda, please let me know if you'd like anything pulled. 11.01 approval
Pull.
of, really?
Yeah.
Approval of certificated and classified personnel items, acceptance of 11.02 acceptance of donations.
Pull. It'll be fast.
11.03 approval of minutes, September 17, 2024. 11.04 approval of purchase orders and CalCard purchases. 11.05 approval of warrants and payroll. 11.06 proposed revisions to board policy 5141.33 head lice, second reading. 11.07 proposed revisions to board policy 6146.1 high school graduation requirements, second reading.
I move approval of items 11.03 to 11.07.
Second.
All right, Mr. Unger.
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton.
Yes.
Mr. Clausen.
Yes.
Mrs. Roger.
Yes.
Mr. Buckman.
Yes.
Mr. Banfield.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the first one that was pulled was 11.01.
11.01. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Nathan Meyer. His wife is going to be delivering twins, and he's going to be taking some time off, and it's the first time I knew about it, so I just thought to congratulate him. I move approval of 11.01.
I have to go to the public since it was pulled. Anyone from the public wishing to
Chair number
express
5.
their good wishes to Mr. Minor. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Buckman, a second, please. Okay, a second by Mrs. Roger. Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger. Yes. Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton.
Yes.
Mr. Unger, I'm a yes. 11.02, acceptance of donations, Mr. Buckman.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Morro Bay High School received $1,000 from Judith for students in need of $64 for the prints. I don't know what prints those are, and I don't know why students are being asked to pay for them. That's not my question. My question is, why are students being asked to pay for prints? And I don't know what the prints are. I
should be from.
Oh. So it's a from, not a for. Okay, it was a typo. Okay, thanks. Anyway, guess we don't need to pay attention to it. I move approval of 11.02.
Yes. Anyone from the public?
Oh.
Mr. Buckman.
Yes.
Mr. Banfield.
Yes.
Mr. Unger.
Yep.
Mrs. Roger. Yes. Mrs. Hinton.
Yes.
Mr. Clausen.
Yes.
Yes. Right. Board, any advance agenda? I see our public trying to sneak out of here. You just stay until you hear our board reports. Any report? Actually, you can leave anytime. Any reports by board members?
I just want to say I'm so sorry to have missed the DLAC. I was looking so forward to that, and I had an emergency trip I had to make on business a few hundred miles away.
Anything else? Mr. Banfield.
Yeah. Kirsten May was so kind to allow Chris and I to have a special board walk today. That was really nice of her. And it was a nice boardwalk too.
Mr. Buckman.
Yeah, I was able to go to Pack Beach for tacos, and it was open house also. And I did go to the DLAC, and I just, Stephanie left. The speaker was absolutely amazing. If he could come here, whatever, but hopefully we can bring him back. Thanks.
Mr. Clausen.
I wanted to thank Jessica Mueller and Ryan and Chris Bonin for their work on the sustainability website, and to say I'm very excited that we now have a sustainability website, and I hope that's the first step towards a broader sustainability program.
Towards sustainability.
Not the first step, but first progress from the sustainability subcommittee doing something useful and progressing.
Okay.
I agree. I'm on that committee too, and Ryan and the gang did a great job.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, very much. See you next time. Thanks.